There is a carpenter in a room filled with the scent of sawdust and quiet frustration. Before him sits a chair, a simple wooden chair, but one of its legs is broken. He has been at this for hours. His tools are scattered around him, a testament to his effort. He hammers a nail into the wood, but the leg splinters. He applies more glue, a thick, desperate layer, but it only oozes out, creating a sticky mess. With each attempt to fix it, the chair seems to become more fragile, more stubbornly broken. The man's focus narrows, his breathing becomes shallow. He is consumed by the act of fixing, by the sheer force of his will against the unyielding wood, blind to a simple truth. The problem isn't the joint, or the nail, or the glue. The problem is the wood itself, rotten from the inside, incapable of holding firm. His effort, however noble, is misplaced. He is trying to mend what can no longer be mended. This carpenter, in his quiet workshop, is a mirror to our own lives. We too are relentless carpenters of the self. We wake up each day with a mental checklist of things to fix. We must fix our anxiety with meditation apps, fix our fatigue with caffeine, fix our loneliness with endless scrolling. We read books to fix our habits, listen to podcasts to optimize our mornings, and go to the gym to sculpt a body we deem acceptable. We treat our sadness, our fears, our insecurities like that broken chair leg, believing that with enough force, enough new techniques, enough sheer effort, we can hammer them back into a perfect, functional shape. But we too often end up exhausted, surrounded by the scattered tools of self-improvement, wondering why we feel more broken than before. We become so focused on the frantic act of mending that we fail to notice the nature of what we are working with. We never stop to simply listen. What if the carpenter were to put down his hammer? What if he were to simply sit and look at the chair, not as a problem to be solved, but as a thing to be understood? What if he were to run his hand over the splintered leg, feeling the soft, crumbling texture of the rotten wood? In that moment of quiet observation, in that act of listening, a new path would emerge. Perhaps the wood cannot be a chair leg anymore, but it could become something else. Perhaps the chair needs to be let go. This is the wisdom offered by the ancient paths, a wisdom not of better tools, but of a different way of being. It does not hand us a stronger hammer. Instead, it invites us to put all the tools down, to become still, and to learn the forgotten art of deep listening. It suggests that the path to healing is not through a desperate act of repair, but through a quiet, hidden door, a door that opens only when we finally stop fixing and begin, truly, to listen. It begins as a whisper, a faint hum beneath the surface of your thoughts. It is not a menacing voice, not at first. In fact, it sounds remarkably like you, and it often presents itself as a friend, a coach, a well-intentioned guide. It is the voice that wakes you in the morning, not with a gentle greeting, but with a quiet inventory of your inadequacies. You didn't sleep enough. You have too much to do. You are already behind. This is the voice of the inner carpenter, the tireless manager of Project U. It's the voice that watched the man in our story, a hand on his shoulder, urging him to strike the wood harder, to apply more glue, convinced that the solution lies in more effort, more force, more fixing. It is the architect of the endless noise, and its primary purpose is to convince you that you are, in your current state, fundamentally and perpetually in need of repair. To begin our journey of listening, we must first learn to recognize the sound of this voice, to understand its origins, its methods, and the subtle devastation it leaves in its wake. This voice is not born in a vacuum. It is a collage, pieced together from 1,000 different sources throughout our lives. It carries the echo of our upbringing, the well-meaning parent who asked why an A wasn't an A+, or the teacher who compared our work to that of another student. These moments, small and often unintentional, plant a seed, the idea that our worth is conditional, that it must be earned through performance and achievement. The voice learns this lesson well. It becomes a phantom of those past expectations, an internal arbiter of good enough, a standard that always seems to hover just beyond our reach. Then, society adds its own layers. We live in a world that has turned life into a performance. Our screens present us with a curated gallery of perfected lives, friendships that are always joyful, bodies that are always toned, careers that are always ascending. This digital stage creates a pervasive, unspoken pressure, a form of social comparison that operates on a global scale. The voice feasts on this. It scrolls through the lives of others and then turns its gaze back to you, drawing up a fresh list of deficiencies. Your home is not as tidy. Your vacations are not as exotic. Your progress is not as swift. It mistakes the highlight reel of others for the full story and judges your own unedited, complex reality against this impossible fiction. This comparison becomes the fuel for its engine, creating a perpetual sense of lack, a feeling that we are constantly falling short in a race we never consciously signed up for. The voice of the fixer is the ultimate conformist, terrified of being left behind, of being seen as anything less than perfect. It whispers that to be safe, to be loved, to be worthy, you must sand down your rough edges, hide your vulnerabilities, and present a flawless facade to the world. Understanding its origins is one thing, but its true power lies in its methods, its insidious, day-to-day operations. The voice works like a diligent but cruel project manager. Its primary tool is the ever-expanding list of flaws. It is a master of magnification, capable of taking a minor mistake, a clumsy word in a meeting, a forgotten errand, a moment of impatience, and blowing it up into a catastrophic failure of character. It doesn't just note the event, it builds a narrative around it. You see, it says, "This proves you are disorganized. This proves you are not a good partner. This proves you are not disciplined." It is a relentless critic, but it masks its criticism as constructive feedback, as a helpful nudge towards self-improvement. Its second great strategy is the shifting of goalposts. Let's say you listen to the voice. It tells you that if you just lose 10 pounds, you will finally feel confident. So you work, you diet, you strive, and you reach the goal. For a fleeting moment, there might be a sense of accomplishment. But the voice does not rest. It will not allow for satisfaction. Before the dust has even settled, it will find a new project. This is good. It will concede, but your arms could be more toned, and now you should really focus on running a marathon. The promise of peace, of arrival, is always deferred. It is a horizon that recedes as you walk towards it. This is its core deception. It presents itself as a path to a future state of perfection, but its very function is to ensure that future never arrives. Its existence depends on your dissatisfaction. If you were to ever feel truly whole, truly complete as you are, the voice would have no job. It would fall silent. And so, it works tirelessly to keep you striving, to keep you fixing, ensuring its own survival. It thrives in the gap between where you are and where it tells you you should be. There is an old story that perfectly illustrates this mindset. A powerful king, whose feet were tender, found walking on the rough roads of his kingdom to be a painful experience. Being a man of action and immense resources, a man with a very powerful inner fixer, he devised a grand solution. He issued a decree that his entire kingdom, every road, every path, every dirt track, must be covered in fine leather. It was an enormous, impossible task that would require countless cows and the labor of thousands. It was an attempt to fix the entire world to accommodate his own sensitivity. As his workers prepared for this monumental undertaking, a wise old sage came to the palace. He bowed to the king and said, "Your Majesty, I have a much simpler proposal. Why go through the trouble of paving the world? Why not simply take a small piece of leather and wrap it around your own feet?" And in that moment, the concept of the shoe was born. We are that king. The voice of the inner fixer is our royal advisor, convincing us that the only way to stop feeling pain is to control and pave over the entire, unpredictable world. It tells us, We must fix our partner's habits, fix our children's choices, fix our boss's mood, fix the economy, fix the political climate. It is an exhausting, impossible task. We spend our lives trying to cover the sharp rocks of reality with leather, trying to smooth out every uncomfortable surface. The sage's wisdom points to a different way. The problem is not the roughness of the road. The road is as it is. The solution is not to change the world, but to change how we meet the world. The piece of leather, the shoe, is an internal shift. It is an act of self-acceptance, of skillful means. It is the beginning of listening, of understanding our own nature and working with it, rather than declaring war on everything outside of it. The voice of the fixer will always demand that you pave the world. The voice of wisdom, of listening, asks only that you find your own shoes. When we live under the constant direction of this inner project manager, the consequences are profound. The most immediate is a low-grade, chronic anxiety. It is the hum of the motor that is always running, the feeling that you are never quite done, never quite safe. It's the tension in your shoulders as you review the day's failures, the tightness in your chest as you anticipate tomorrow's hurdles. Life ceases to be a flow, a dance, and becomes a series of tests to be passed or failed. This, in turn, erodes our sense of self-worth. How can you value yourself if you are constantly being told you are a project under construction? Your inherent worthiness, the simple fact of your being, gets buried under layers of self-judgment. You begin to believe the voice's central premise, that your value is not intrinsic, but is something that must be built, earned, and constantly maintained. And finally, this leads to a deep, soul-level exhaustion. It is tiring to be a project. It is tiring to be in a constant state of self-improvement, where even rest and leisure are repurposed as tools for greater productivity. We forget how to simply be. We lose the ability to sit with ourselves in quiet acceptance, because the silence is immediately filled by the fixer's next assignment. We become alienated from our own lives, observing ourselves from a distance, constantly critiquing the performance rather than living the experience. Recognizing this voice is the first, crucial step. It is not about declaring war on it, for fighting it only gives it more strength. It is not about fixing the fixer, it is simply about noticing it. To see it not as the absolute truth of who you are, but as a conditioned pattern of thought, a collection of old habits and fears. It is to greet it with a quiet awareness. Ah, you can say to yourself, there is the voice of the fixer again. I see it, I hear it. This simple act of recognition creates a space between you and the voice. In that space, a new possibility can arise. In that space, listening can begin. We have now identified this tireless manager of our imperfections, but a crucial question remains. Why are its strategies, its constant efforts to pave the world and fix our flaws, so often doomed to fail? Why does hammering harder, like our friend the carpenter, only cause the wood to splinter and the spirit to break? To answer that, we must look deeper, into the very nature of reality itself. The carpenter's failure, his frustration, was not born from a lack of skill or a weakness of will. He failed because he fundamentally misunderstood the material he was working with. He treated rotten, brittle wood as if it were strong and whole, and every action based on that misunderstanding only pushed it further toward collapse. Our own tireless efforts to fix ourselves and our world so often backfire for the very same reason. The voice of the inner fixer, the relentless project manager, operates on a profound illusion. It believes that life is a static object, a solid structure that can be controlled, perfected, and nailed into place. But life is not a block of wood, life is a river. And our suffering arises not from the river's current, but from our desperate attempt to build a dam in the middle of it. This misunderstanding of life's true nature is the root of why our fixing fails, and why our resistance only creates more pain. The ancient teachers of the East had a word for this fundamental nature of reality, anicca. In English, it is often translated as impermanence. But this is not just a philosophical concept. It is the most practical, observable truth of our existence. Nothing is fixed. Everything flows. You can never step into the same river twice, not just because the water has moved on, but because you too have changed. The person who wades into the water is not the same person who waded in a moment before. This is not poetry. It is biology. It is physics. It is psychology. Your body, right now, is a swirling constellation of processes. Cells are dying. New cells are being born. The air you just inhaled is different from the air you will inhale next. Your physical self is not a static sculpture, but a continuous event. The same is true for our inner world. Our emotions, which we often treat as solid, defining traits, are nothing more than weather patterns passing through the sky of our awareness. A moment of joy is a sudden sunbeam, warm and brilliant. A wave of sadness is a passing cloud, casting a temporary shadow. A flash of anger is a bolt of lightning, intense but fleeting. The inner fixer, believing in permanence, makes two critical errors. When the sunbeam of joy appears, it tries to capture it, to build a house around it, terrified of it leaving. This clinging creates a subtle anxiety, a fear of loss that taints the joy itself. And when the storm cloud of sadness arrives, the fixer panics. It declares an emergency, trying to build a wall to keep the cloud out, to fight the rain, to deny the weather. This resistance, this battle against what is already happening, is exhausting and futile. The cloud was always going to pass on its own, but our fight against it creates a secondary layer of suffering, a storm of our own making. This principle extends to everything we hold dear. Our relationships are not static contracts. They are living, breathing dances that change with every step. Our careers, our homes, our life situations are all subject to the ceaseless current of anicca. There is no final arrival point, no plateau where everything will be perfectly arranged and locked in place forever. The universe is in a constant state of becoming. The voice of the fixer, however, is the voice of denial. It is a voice that whispers, "We can make it stay. We can control this. We can achieve a permanent state of security and happiness if we just try hard enough." This is the grand illusion of control. Imagine trying to hold a handful of water. If you cup your hands gently, you can hold it for a while. But if you listen to the voice of the fixer, the voice of control, you will believe the way to secure the water is to squeeze your fist tighter. The harder you squeeze, the more you strain, the faster the water escapes through the cracks between your fingers. In the end, you are left with nothing but an empty, aching hand. The suffering was not in the water or its flowing nature. The suffering was in the clenching, in the resistance. Our attempts to fix and control life are precisely this act of clenching. We try to force a relationship into a preconceived mold, and we squeeze the life out of it. We try to cling to a particular version of ourselves, our youth, our past successes, and we create a painful tension between memory and reality. We try to eliminate all uncertainty from our future, and we fill our present moment with the strain of anxiety. This is why the constant fixing backfires. It is an act of war against the fundamental laws of nature. It's like standing on a shore and commanding the tide not to turn. The ocean does not listen. Your commands only leave you feeling powerless and hoarse. The tension we feel in our lives, the stress, the anxiety, the frustration is the sound of our own resistance. It is the friction burn caused by rubbing up against the grain of reality. There is a beautiful parable that captures this wisdom. In a great forest, there grew a mighty oak tree. It was ancient and proud, its trunk thick and unyielding, its branches reaching for the sky like powerful arms. It had stood for centuries, a symbol of strength and permanence. Nearby, by the edge of a stream, grew a slender reed. It was humble and pliable, swaying with the slightest breeze. The oak tree often looked down upon the reed with a kind of pity. "Poor thing," the oak would think, "you have no strength. You bend to every whim of the wind. Look at me. I do not bend. I am strong." One year, A terrible storm rolled into the forest. The winds howled with a fury no one had ever seen. The mighty oak braced itself. It met the wind with its full, rigid strength, refusing to yield even an inch. It was a battle of wills, the tree's pride against the storm's power. The wind pushed harder and harder, and the great tree groaned under the strain. For a moment, it seemed it would hold, but then, with a deafening crack that echoed through the forest, its massive trunk snapped in two, and the proud oak came crashing to the ground. Meanwhile, the humble reed did something different. As the wind blew, it did not resist. It listened to the wind's power and bent low, so low that it nearly touched the water of the stream. The storm raged over it, its fury passing right above. When the morning came and the sun rose, the forest was littered with fallen giants. But the slender reed, which had bent with the storm, slowly rose up again, unharmed, glistening in the morning light. The oak tree is the way of the fixer. It is the illusion that rigidity is strength, that control is security. The reed is the way of listening. It is the wisdom that flexibility is true resilience. The storm is life itself, not a single event, but the constant, unpredictable flow of change, loss, joy, and challenge. To resist the storm is to ensure that you will eventually break. To bend with it, to accept its power, is to survive and even thrive. Acceptance, in this sense, is not a passive surrender. It is not apathy or defeat. The reed does not give up. It responds with profound intelligence. Acceptance is a clear-eyed acknowledgement of reality. It is putting down the tools of resistance and simply seeing what is truly there. It is the moment the carpenter stops hammering and finally sees that the wood is rotten. This clarity is the most powerful tool we have. It is only when we accept that life is a river that we can learn to navigate it. You cannot surf on what you believe to be a concrete road. You cannot sail on what you believe to be a frozen lake. Accepting impermanence frees up the monumental amount of energy we waste in our futile fight against reality. All the energy we pour into worry, into trying to control others, into resisting uncomfortable feelings, this energy is liberated. It can then be repurposed for wise and compassionate action. We stop trying to dam the river and instead, we learn to build a rudder. We learn to read the currents, to steer our small boat with skill and grace, knowing that we can never control the river, but we can always choose how we relate to it. Our suffering, then, is a message. That chronic tightness in our shoulders, that persistent knot of anxiety in our stomach is not a flaw to be fixed. It is a communication. It is the creaking of the oak tree just before it snaps. It is the ache in the hand that is clenched too tight. It is the body, the heart, and the mind crying out in unison, "Let go." You are fighting a battle you cannot win, because it is a battle against what is. This constant resistance, this war against the natural flow of life, generates a very specific kind of internal friction. It manifests as the signature ailments of our modern age. A deep and pervasive stress, a relentless anxiety, and a profound sense of exhaustion. To continue our journey of listening, we must now turn our attention to these symptoms, not as enemies to be defeated, but as messengers carrying this vital, liberating truth. The friction from our fight against the river of life is not a silent, abstract force. It manifests within us as a palpable experience, a distinct texture of being. It has names we know all too well: stress, anxiety, burnout. We have been taught to view these states as enemies, as malfunctions in our personal machinery that must be eradicated. We see them as evidence of our weakness, a sign that we are not coping well enough. But this is the fixer's perspective, the perspective of the carpenter who blames the wood for being rotten. The wisdom of listening invites a radical shift. It asks us to see these states not as the illness, but as the symptoms. They are not the fire, but the smoke alarm, desperately trying to call our attention to a blaze we are ignoring. They are the anatomy of our modern suffering, and to heal, we must first learn to read their language. At the heart of this experience is a concept the Buddha called dukkha. This word is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far more subtle and profound. It is not just overt pain like grief or injury. Dukkha is the pervasive, underlying sense of unsatisfactoriness that hums in the background of a life lived in resistance. It is the feeling of being fundamentally unsettled. It is the itch you can't quite scratch, the vague restlessness on a perfectly pleasant Sunday afternoon, the quiet feeling that something is missing even when everything seems to be right. It is the experience of the clenched fist, the strain of holding on. When the inner fixer is in charge, dukkha becomes our baseline reality, because the fixer's entire worldview is based on the premise that things are not okay as they are. This constant, low-grade friction is the soil from which the more acute states of stress and anxiety grow. Let us look at stress, not as a modern plague, but as an ancient, intelligent messenger. When you feel the familiar tightening in your shoulders, the shallow breath, the cortisol coursing through your veins, your body is speaking to you in its native tongue. It is not malfunctioning. It is sending a clear signal. We are operating beyond our sustainable capacity. A boundary has been crossed. The energy being demanded is greater than the energy being supplied. Stress is a message from the deeply wise biological self that is simply trying to keep you alive and whole. But how does the inner fixer respond to this message? It shoots the messenger. It sees stress as a problem of productivity. It numbs the signal with a third cup of coffee. It pushes through the exhaustion with sheer willpower. It overrides the body's wisdom with the mind's ambition. It hears the alarm, and instead of checking for a fire, it tries to dismantle the alarm so it can get back to work. This is an act of violence against ourselves. By refusing to listen to the message of stress, we force the body to scream louder, leading to chronic ailments, a compromised immune system, and eventually, the systemic shutdown we call burnout. Anxiety is a different messenger, one that speaks for the mind. While stress is often rooted in a very real present-moment overload, anxiety is a form of mental time travel. It is the mind's refusal to stay in the only moment that actually exists, the present. When we are anxious, our consciousness has left the building. It has journeyed into 1,000 imagined futures, playing out catastrophic scenarios that have not happened and likely never will. Or it has become ensnared in the past, replaying old wounds, rehearsing old conversations, trying to retroactively fix what is already gone. Anxiety is the vertigo we feel from this constant, disorienting travel. It is the mind's messenger, tapping us on the shoulder and saying, "We are not here. We are lost in a phantom world of what if and if only." And how does the fixer respond? It hears this message and concludes that the solution is to think even harder. It tries to outwit the future by planning for every conceivable contingency, creating endless to-do lists and mental flowcharts. It tries to resolve the past by ruminating on it endlessly, dissecting every detail. In doing so, it pours fuel on the fire. It gives the anxious mind exactly what it wants, more to think about. It never considers the possibility that the solution is not to think more, but to simply return home to the present moment, to the anchor of the breath and the reality of the body. When we refuse to listen to these messengers, we are left with no choice but to suppress them. Our culture provides us with an infinite buffet of tools for suppression. We can drown the voice of anxiety in the noise of a streaming service, numb the ache of stress with alcohol or food, or distract ourselves from the emptiness of burnout with the frantic acquisition of new things. This is like having a strange rattling noise in your car's engine and trying to fix it by turning up the radio. For a while, it might seem to work. You can't hear the rattle anymore. But the underlying problem has not gone away. In fact, it is getting worse. And one day, the engine will seize, the car will break down, and you will be left stranded on the side of the road. This is the nature of burnout. It is not a sudden event. It is the predictable outcome of systematically ignoring the body's and mind's cries for help. There is a powerful Buddhist teaching that illuminates this entire process. It is the parable of the second arrow. The story goes that in life, from time to time, we will all be struck by an arrow. This is the first arrow. It is the inevitable, unavoidable pain of human existence. It is the loss of a loved one, a sudden illness, a financial setback, an unkind word from a stranger. These first arrows are not personal. They are a part of the landscape of life, the rough parts of the road the king wanted to pave over. No amount of striving or perfection can make us immune to them. The real suffering, the teaching suggests, begins with the second arrow. This is the arrow we shoot at ourselves. After being struck by the first arrow of a painful event, we react with a second arrow of judgment, resistance, and narration. A difficult conversation at work is a first arrow. The second arrow is the story we tell ourselves for the rest of the day. I handled that so badly. I'm a failure. My boss probably thinks I'm an idiot. I might get fired. Why do I always mess things up? The initial pain of the conversation was real but fleeting. The suffering, the anxiety, the stress that ruins your evening, that is the poison of the second arrow. The first arrow is the event. The second arrow is our relationship to the event. The inner fixer is a master archer of these second arrows. Its entire job is to analyze the hit from the first arrow and then fire a volley of secondary wounds. It meets pain with blame. It meets uncertainty with fear. It meets failure with shame. Stress and anxiety are the names we give to the pain of these self-inflicted wounds. When we are caught in their grip, we are not just feeling the pain of life. We are feeling the far greater pain of our resistance to life. We are feeling the pain of the story that what is happening should not be happening. Learning to listen, then, is learning to notice the difference between the two arrows. It is to feel the sting of the first arrow, the disappointment, the sadness, the fear, and to learn to care for that wound without reaching for the quiver to shoot another. It is to offer ourselves compassion instead of condemnation. It is to acknowledge the pain without adding the layer of a story about what the pain means about us. This habit of firing second arrows, of constantly reacting to our own lives with judgment and resistance, is the very essence of the fixer's strategy. It turns our existence into a problem to be solved, a battlefield of first and second arrows. We become a project, not a person. And this leads to the most profound exhaustion of all, the weariness that comes from being at war with yourself. The war we wage against ourselves, the endless battle against our own imperfections fueled by the pain of second arrows, requires that we objectify the battlefield. We must turn our very being into a thing, a territory to be managed, conquered, and pacified. This is how a person becomes a project. We cease to be the artist of our life and become its anxious administrator, the overworked CEO of Me Incorporated. This role is the source of a unique and profound form of modern exhaustion. It is not the simple tiredness that comes from a long day of physical labor. It is the deep, soul-wearying fatigue that arises from the relentless 24-hour-a-day job of constructing, managing, and perfecting a version of yourself that is deemed worthy of the world. In this project-managed life, everything becomes a metric. We are the architects of our own performance reviews. We track our steps, our sleep cycles, our calories, our screen time, gathering data not for gentle insight, but for judgment. We are no longer a person who enjoys a walk. We are a system that has failed to meet its 10,000-step goal. We are no longer someone who had a restless night. We are a machine whose sleep performance was suboptimal. This is the era of the quantified self, where the richness of experience is flattened into a spreadsheet, and life's beautiful, messy unpredictability is treated as a variable to be controlled. Our very existence becomes a problem set, and we, the tireless analysts, are tasked with optimizing the data points until they form a perfect trend line of upward progress. This optimized self is then packaged for public consumption. We become curators of our own museum, where only the most flattering exhibits are displayed. Social media is the grand gallery for this project, a space where we present our after photos, our career achievements, our picturesque vacations, our perfect-looking families. We post the evidence of our successful self-management, and the likes and comments become the currency of our validation. Our experiences are no longer lived for their own sake. They are harvested for their content. A beautiful sunset is not just a sunset. It is a potential post. A meal with a friend is not just a connection. It is a story to be shared. We begin to live with a third eye, an imaginary camera that is always watching, always asking, how will this look to others? How does this fit into the brand of me? This is an incredibly heavy burden. It creates a split within us, a gap between the lived, moment-to-moment reality and the curated, polished narrative we present to the world and even to ourselves. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of this project mindset is how it colonizes the very things that should be our refuge. Rest, play, and joy are no longer allowed to be ends in themselves. They too are conscripted into the army of self-optimization. We no longer rest simply because we are tired. We biohack our sleep, using weighted blankets and blackout curtains, not for the simple pleasure of a good night's sleep, but to maximize our cognitive performance the next day. Rest becomes an investment in future productivity. Play is rebranded as a side hustle or skill development. A hobby is judged by its potential to be monetized or its value on a resume. Even love and friendship can be tainted by the language of networking and social capital. And what of meditation and spirituality, the ancient paths of liberation? They too are often co-opted by the project manager. The practice of mindfulness, which is fundamentally about non-striving and acceptance of the present moment, is twisted into another tool for self-improvement. It becomes a technique to reduce stress so we can be more effective workers, a method to increase focus so we can be more productive. We add meditate for 10 minutes to our to-do list, and if we miss a day, the inner fixer berates us for failing at our relaxation. We turn the path of letting go into another thing to achieve, another metric of our success as a spiritual project. This robs these sacred practices of their transformative power, turning them from a path of freedom into just another bar on the cage of self-improvement. This is the source of the great exhaustion. We are tired of the constant monitoring, the endless measuring, the relentless pressure to upgrade. We are tired of being both the manager and the underperforming employee, the judge and the judged. We are weary from the sheer effort of holding up the facade of the perfect project. But what if the entire premise is wrong? What if the project itself is a fiction? This is where the deepest wisdom of the listening path offers a radical and liberating alternative. It introduces us to the concept of anatta, or no self. This idea is perhaps the most misunderstood and yet the most freeing in all of Buddhist thought. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It does not mean you are nothing. It simply means that the self you have been trying so desperately to fix, that solid, continuous, independent CEO in your head, is an illusion. When you look closely, with the quiet attention of listening, you cannot find it. What you find instead is a process, a flowing, interconnected stream of experiences. You find physical sensations rising and falling. You find feelings appearing and disappearing like weather. You find thoughts bubbling up and dissolving. You find perceptions changing from moment to moment. What you call I is not a thing, but a verb. It is a dynamic, ever-changing pattern of these elements, completely dependent on everything else in the universe. There is no permanent, separate project manager behind the scenes. There is only the unfolding process. You cannot grab hold of a thought and say, "This is me." The thought is gone in an instant. You cannot point to a feeling and say, "This is me." The feeling will be replaced by another. The exhaustion comes from trying to do this impossible thing, from trying to build a permanent, solid statue out of the flowing water of a river. The project of me is a ghost we are trying to dress in fine clothes. The beloved Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful way to understand this. He would hold up a single sheet of blank paper and invite his students to look deeply into it. If you are a poet, he would say, you will see that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. At first, this seems strange, but if you listen, you understand. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow, and without trees, you cannot make paper. So the cloud is an essential part of the paper. If you take the cloud out, the paper cannot be. But it doesn't stop there. If you look deeper, you also see the sunshine. The sunshine was vital for the tree to grow. So the sun is in the paper. And if you look deeper still, you see the logger who cut down the tree, and you see his parents, and the wheat that made the bread he ate for breakfast. You see the soil, the earth, the entire cosmos reflected in this single sheet of paper. The paper is empty of one thing, a separate, independent self. It is full of everything else. The same is true for you. You are not a separate, isolated project. Look deeply, and you will see your parents and your ancestors within you. You will see the sun, the rain, and the earth in the food that builds your body. You will see the thousands of thinkers, writers, and friends whose ideas and kindness have shaped your mind. You are empty of a separate self, but you are full of the entire universe. Who then is this exhausted project manager? It is a ghost, a story, a habit of thought, and you have the power to let it go. You can resign from the impossible job of being the CEO of Me, Incorporated. You can put down the heavy burden of the project. This realization doesn't solve all your problems, but it changes the entire game. It removes the central character in the drama of self-improvement. It takes away the object of the fixing. It allows you to finally rest, not as a strategy for a more productive tomorrow, but as a deep acceptance of what you are in this moment. A temporary, beautiful, and interconnected manifestation of the entire universe. So, if we are not a project to be managed, if we are to put down the tools of fixing, a crucial question arises: what do we do instead? If all this striving is misguided, where do we place our effort? The answer is both profoundly simple and radically different from everything the fixer has ever told you. It begins not with a new action, not with a new strategy, but with its opposite. It begins with the courage to simply stop. The project of the self is exhausting because it is a race with no finish line, a battle against a phantom. We have laid bare the origins of the inner fixer. We have seen how its strategies of control are doomed to fail in a world of constant change, and we have felt the anatomy of the suffering it creates. The weariness we feel is a signal that this way of life is unsustainable. So, the question hangs in the air, potent and sincere. If we are not to fix, not to strive, not to manage ourselves into perfection, what are we to do? The answer, offered by the wisdom of the listening path, is both the simplest and most difficult thing in the world. It is a single action, an act so contrary to the logic of our culture that it feels radical, even revolutionary. The first step is to simply stop. This act of stopping is not one of laziness or resignation. It is not giving up. It is, in fact, an act of immense courage and deliberate intention. In a world that screams for more speed, more productivity, more optimization, to choose stillness is a profound statement. It is the carpenter finally putting down his hammer. It is the king abandoning his quest to pave the world. It is the conscious decision to step off the hamster wheel of self-improvement, even for a single moment. This intentional act of stopping, of bringing our full awareness to the present moment, is the heart of a practice called mindfulness. The word itself has become so common that its true meaning is often diluted, packaged, and sold as another life hack to make you a better version of your project self. But its original essence is far deeper. The ancient word for it, sati, means to remember. It is a practice of remembering to come home, remembering to return to the present moment, the only place where life is actually unfolding. The most useful definition of mindfulness is this: paying attention in the present moment, on purpose, and without judgment. Each part of that definition is a direct antidote to the voice of the inner fixer. Paying attention on purpose means that we are gently and intentionally directing our awareness. The fixer's mind is a scattered mind, constantly pulled into the past to ruminate or into the future to worry. Mindfulness is the act of gathering that scattered energy and bringing it to one place, right here. In the present moment is the location of this practice. It is a return from the phantom worlds of yesterday and tomorrow to the solid ground of the now. But the most radical and healing part of the definition is the final clause, without judgment. The fixer's entire world is built on judgment. It is a constant evaluation of good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure. Mindfulness invites us, for the first time, to simply look at our experience without labeling it, to notice a feeling of sadness without judging it as bad, to observe a thought of fear without condemning ourselves for having it. It is an act of radical amnesty for our own inner world. A great misunderstanding arises here. Many people try this practice. They sit down to be mindful, and they find that their mind is a chaotic storm of thoughts. I can't do it, they conclude. I can't empty my mind. This is the fixer's goal, a perfectly calm, empty mind. But this is not the goal of mindfulness. The invitation is not to get rid of your thoughts, but to change your relationship to them. Imagine your mind is the vast open sky. Your thoughts and feelings are the weather clouds, sunshine, wind, rain. The fixer's approach is to try to control the weather. It wants only sunny days. When a dark cloud of anxiety appears, it tries to fight it, to push it away, which is as futile as trying to push a real cloud out of the sky. Mindfulness offers a different way. It invites you to stop identifying with the clouds and instead to rest in the awareness of the sky itself. The sky does not fight the clouds. The sky allows the clouds to come and to go. It holds them without judgment. A big, dark storm cloud may pass through, but the sky is not the storm cloud. The sky remains vast, open, and untouched. In the same way, you can learn to observe a thought of anger arising in you. You can say, "Ah, I see a thought of anger. A cloud of anger is passing through." You notice it, you acknowledge it, but you don't have to become it. You don't have to believe it or act on it. You are the sky, not the cloud. This shift in perspective is the beginning of true freedom. This does not require you to retreat to a monastery or sit on a cushion for hours. The power of stopping can be found in a single, conscious moment. You can practice it right now. It is the power of the pause. Think of the space between a stimulus and your reaction. Someone says something critical to you. That is the stimulus. The automatic reaction, programmed by the fixer, might be to become defensive, to lash out, to feel shame. This reaction is instantaneous, a well-worn neural pathway. The pause is the act of inserting a moment of mindfulness between the stimulus and the reaction. The critical comment arrives. Before you do anything, you stop. You take one conscious breath. You feel the air enter your body and leave your body. You feel your feet on the floor. In that brief space, that sacred pause, you have broken the chain of unconscious reactivity. You have created a moment of freedom. From that space of calm awareness, you can now choose your response, rather than being a victim of your reaction. This tiny moment is where our power lies. You can create these pauses throughout your day. A pause before you pick up your phone. A pause before you enter a stressful meeting. A pause when you feel the first stirrings of anger or frustration. Each pause is a revolutionary act. It is a declaration that you will no longer be run by the automatic, fear-based programming of the fixer. Each pause is a return home to yourself. There is a story of a great scholar, a man who lived entirely in his head, surrounded by books and towering ideas. One morning, he couldn't find his reading glasses. He needed them to work, and his frustration grew into a frantic panic. He searched his desk, scattering papers everywhere. He looked under the furniture. He stormed through the library, his agitation mounting with every passing moment. He was in a state of intense, active fixing, his energy directed entirely outward, convinced the solution was out there, somewhere in the chaotic room. After an hour of this fruitless searching, exhausted and defeated, he slumped into his chair. He gave up. He stopped. In a gesture of pure weariness, he sighed and rubbed his tired forehead, and his fingers brushed against the smooth, familiar frame of his glasses. They had been perched on his head the entire time. We are all this scholar. We are frantically searching the world for something we believe we have lost: peace, clarity, happiness. We look for it in our careers, in our relationships, in our possessions, in the next self-help book. Our search is effortful, anxious, and directed outward. The story teaches us that the thing we are so desperately seeking is often already here, obscured not by its absence, but by the very franticness of our search. The solution for the scholar was not to look harder. The solution was to stop. The moment of surrender, the pause, allowed his awareness to shift from the external world to his own immediate physical experience. And there, he found what he was looking for. This radical act of stopping, of mindfulness, is not the final destination. It is the moment the scholar slumps in his chair. It is the necessary prerequisite for discovery. It clears the dust. It stills the trembling waters. It creates the quiet, receptive space necessary for the next, even deeper, practice. Stopping is the prelude. What follows is the main event, the profound and transformative art of deep listening. Now that we have opened the door by becoming still, what do we find on the other side? What does it truly mean to listen not just with our ears, but with our entire being? The act of stopping, of creating a mindful pause, is like opening a door that has been sealed shut for years. At first, our eyes may need to adjust to the light. The room on the other side is quiet, and for a mind accustomed to constant noise and motion, this quiet can feel unsettling. We have stepped out of the frantic workshop of the fixer, and now we stand at the threshold of a new way of being. So what do we do in this newfound space? The answer is at the heart of our journey. We learn to listen. But this is not the listening we are used to. It is as different from everyday hearing as a child's scrawl is from a master's calligraphy. Hearing is a passive biological function, the simple registration of sound waves by the eardrum. It happens without our consent. Listening, in the way the wisdom traditions speak of it, is a conscious art form. It is a total, holistic engagement with reality. It is the primary skill for navigating life with grace rather than force. To listen in this way is to use your entire being as a receptive instrument. It begins with the ears, of course, but it does not end there. We learn to listen with our eyes. This is the practice of seeing the world without the immediate filter of our labels and judgments. The inner fixer looks at a tree and immediately categorizes it. That's an oak. It needs pruning. Its leaves are messy. It sees the tree not as it is, but as a problem to be managed or an object to be used. Listening with the eyes is different. It is to look at the same tree and see the intricate pattern of its bark, the way the sunlight dapples through its leaves, the subtle sway of its branches in the wind. It is an act of pure observation, of appreciating the isness of the tree before the mind rushes in to name it, judge it, or fix it. It is to see a person's face and notice the weariness around their eyes or the slight tremor in their smile, rather than just seeing the role they play in our life: boss, parent, partner. We also learn to listen with our body. For most of us, the body is a vehicle to be fueled or a statue to be sculpted. We live in our heads, largely disconnected from the rich tapestry of physical sensation that is constantly unfolding. The body, however, is always speaking a language of its own, a language of pure, honest truth. It speaks in the language of sensation, a tightness in the jaw, a fluttering in the stomach, a warmth spreading through the chest, a heaviness in the limbs. These are not random mechanical glitches. They are communications from our inner world. That knot in your stomach before a difficult conversation Is your body listening to the situation and telling you, pay attention? There is something vulnerable here. That feeling of expansion and warmth when you hear a beautiful piece of music is your body communicating a sense of resonance and harmony. To listen with the body is to bring a gentle, curious awareness to these sensations, allowing them to be our guide to the unspoken truth of our experience. And finally, we learn to listen with our heart. This is the capacity for empathy, for intuition, for feeling into the emotional landscape of a moment. The fixer's mind analyzes and strategizes. The listening heart feels and connects. It's the ability to walk into a room and sense the mood without a single word being spoken. It's the ability to sit with a friend in sorrow and feel the shape of their pain without needing to offer solutions. This listening is a form of resonance, like one tuning fork vibrating in response to another. It is a recognition of our shared humanity, a connection that happens beneath the level of words and ideas. The most crucial element that distinguishes this deep listening from the fixer's analysis is the temporary suspension of the agenda to change anything. The fixer is always listening for something, a problem, a flaw, an opportunity to intervene. Its listening is strategic, predatory. It's like a wolf listening for the sound of a wounded animal. True, deep listening is receptive. It listens to what is, with no immediate goal other than to understand and to be present with it. Imagine the difference between a mechanic listening to a car engine to diagnose the fault and a mother listening to the breathing of her sleeping child. The mechanic is listening for what is wrong. The mother is listening with pure presence, with love, taking in the simple, precious reality of the sound. Healing and wisdom arise from this second kind of listening. This does not mean we become passive and never act. It means our action, when it comes, will be far more intelligent and compassionate, because it will arise from a place of genuine understanding, not from a reactive impulse to eliminate something we find uncomfortable. This art of listening is supported by three essential pillars, three qualities of mind and heart that we cultivate. The first is attention. This is the focused, steady awareness we explored in the practice of mindfulness. It is the ability to gently place our mind on something, a sound, a sensation, the words of another person, and keep it there. It is the act of saying with our focus, "This matters. I am here with you." Without this steady attention, our listening is shallow and easily distracted. The second pillar is acceptance. This is the spacious quality of mind that allows our experience to be exactly as it is, without our needing it to be different. It is a radical hospitality for the present moment. If we are listening to a feeling of anxiety, acceptance means we allow the physical sensations of that anxiety, the racing heart, the tight chest to be there, without trying to suppress them or push them away. It is not agreement or approval. It is a simple, courageous acknowledgement of what is. It is the quality that lets the storm cloud pass through the sky without resistance. The third pillar is compassion. This is the warmth of the heart that transforms listening from a clinical observation into a healing embrace. It is the quality of kindness and tenderness. When we listen to our own pain with compassion, we are treating ourselves as we would a dear friend. When we listen to another person with compassion, we are offering them a sanctuary, a space where they can be fully themselves without fear of judgment. Attention provides the focus, acceptance provides the space, and compassion provides the warmth. Together, they create the container for deep listening and profound healing. In the spiritual traditions of Asia, this ultimate potential for compassionate listening is embodied in an archetypal figure known as Avalokiteshvara, or Quan Theum in Vietnamese. This name literally means the one who hears the cries of the world. This figure is often depicted with 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes, a powerful metaphor for the ability to perceive the suffering of the world in all its forms and to respond in countless skillful ways. The deepest teaching of this archetype is that its primary power is not in magically erasing all pain. Its power is in its capacity to listen to that pain, completely, perfectly, and with boundless compassion. The healing, for the one who is suffering, begins in the profound experience of being truly heard, of having one's reality acknowledged and held in a space of unconditional, loving awareness. Avalokiteshvara represents the full flowering of our own human potential to listen in this way, to listen to ourselves, to each other, and to the world with our whole being. This art of listening, this divine capacity embodied in the archetypes of compassion, may seem lofty or unattainable, but its practice does not begin on a distant, mystical plane. It begins in the most humble, ordinary, and accessible place imaginable. It begins with the very ground of our being, the home we inhabit every moment of our lives but so often treat like a stranger. The first conversation in this new language, the first act of this courageous, compassionate art, is with our own body. The art of listening, as we have explored it, is one of presence, acceptance, and compassion. It is a turning toward reality rather than away from it. But where do we begin this practice? Where is the first door upon which we knock? The answer is always the same. We begin where we are. We begin with the most immediate, tangible, and undeniable reality of our existence, the physical body. For most of us, the body is a forgotten country. It is the homeland we were born into but have long since emigrated from, choosing instead to live as expats in the busy, noisy cities of our minds. We treat it like a beast of burden, a faithful servant whose job is to carry our brain from one appointment to the next. The inner fixer sees the body as a machine to be maintained or a sculpture to be perfected project, just like everything else. But the path of listening invites us to see the body differently, not as a machine, but as a wise and living intelligence, not as a project, but as our primary home. The first conversation on the path to healing is learning to listen to the silent, profound wisdom of our own flesh and bone. This disconnect is a hallmark of our modern age. We spend our days bathed in the disembodying blue light of screens, our consciousness projected into digital worlds of information and entertainment. We are masters of abstract thought, of planning, worrying, and remembering. But we are novices in the simple art of inhabiting our own skin. The body becomes an afterthought, something we only notice when it causes a problem, when it aches, when it gets sick, when it fails to meet our aesthetic demands. This creates a dangerous schism between mind and body, a separation that leaves us feeling fragmented and ungrounded. We live like ghosts in our own houses, rattling around in the attic of our intellect, completely unaware of the life unfolding in the rooms below. The fixer perpetuates this split. It judges the body, criticizes it, demands that it be younger, thinner, stronger. It wages war on the body's natural processes of aging and change. This relationship, based on control and shame, only deepens our alienation. To begin listening is to call a truce in this war. It is to begin the slow, patient process of coming home. The body does not speak in the language of words, with its capacity for deception and complexity. The body speaks in the universal, primal language of sensation. This language is ruthlessly honest. While your mind might be telling you and everyone else, "I'm fine, everything is under control," the tight knot in your stomach is telling a different story. While your words might be calm and measured, the clenching of your jaw is speaking a truth of unexpressed anger or frustration. These sensations are not random. They are the physical vocabulary of our emotional lives. Grief has a texture often, a profound heaviness in the chest, a sense of being hollowed out. Fear has a frequency, a cold, electric tingling, a contraction in the solar plexus. Joy has a feeling of expansion, a radiant warmth that can seem to emanate from the heart. Stress is not an abstract concept. It is the felt reality of tense shoulders, a constricted throat, and shallow breathing. The body perpetually braced for an impact that never comes. Listening to the body is learning to read this language. It is a practice of radical self-honesty. a way of bypassing the stories of the mind and tuning into the raw data of our lived experience. The most direct way to learn this language is through the formal practice of a body scan. This is not a medical scan to find what is wrong, but a mindful scan to notice what is here. It is a slow, methodical journey of attention through your own physical landscape, undertaken with a spirit of kindness and curiosity. Imagine lying down in a quiet space and closing your eyes. The practice begins not by trying to relax, but by simply bringing your awareness, like a soft, gentle spotlight, to the toes of your left foot. You are not asked to change anything. You are simply invited to listen. What is here? Is there warmth, coolness, tingling, a feeling of contact with a sock or the air? Or is there no sensation at all, just a kind of numbness? Whatever you find is okay. You simply note it, without judgment. Then, you gently guide that spotlight of awareness up through the sole of the foot, the heel, the ankle. You travel up the shin and the calf, into the knee and the thigh, simply receiving the raw data of sensation. You are not looking for anything special. You are paying attention to the mundane, the ordinary reality of your body. As you continue this journey through your entire body, the hips, the belly, the chest, the back, the arms and hands, the neck and face, you practice bringing those three pillars of listening to the forefront. You bring attention, staying with the sensations as best you can. You bring acceptance, allowing whatever you find, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, to be there without a fight. And you bring compassion, a gentle, friendly quality of awareness, especially to areas of discomfort or pain. When you arrive at your tense shoulders, instead of commanding them to relax, you might offer them a silent, kind acknowledgement. Ah, I feel you. I know you are carrying a heavy load. There is a story of a soldier who returned home after many years on the battlefield. The war was officially over, but inside his body, the battle raged on. Though he walked on peaceful city streets, his muscles remained coiled in the posture of combat. His shoulders were permanently hunched, as if still carrying a heavy rucksack. His back was rigid and straight, his jaw was perpetually clenched. This unconscious armoring, this physical memory of trauma, resulted in years of debilitating pain. He suffered from chronic headaches, relentless backaches, and digestive turmoil. He went to doctors who scanned his body and found nothing structurally wrong. He tried to fix the pain with medication, with harsh exercises, with sheer willpower, but the deep, underlying tension would not yield. His body was screaming a story, but no one, including himself, was listening. Finally, he met a teacher who did not try to fix him. Instead, she gently guided him to listen to himself. She invited him to lie down and simply feel the tension in his own shoulders. Not to relax it, not to judge it, not to analyze it, but to simply feel it. For the first time, he turned his attention toward his pain, not as an enemy, but with a simple, courageous curiosity. As he stayed with the sensations, listening with this newfound presence, he began to feel the story stored in the muscles, the years of fear, the weight of his responsibilities, the unspeakable grief he had witnessed. He listened to the silent screams held in the fibers of his own being. And as he listened, something profound began to shift. The body, finally feeling seen, finally feeling safe enough to tell its story, began to let go. The armor, which was no longer needed, started to soften. The pain, which was a desperate cry for attention, slowly began to dissolve, not because it was forced away, but because it had finally been heard. His healing came not from a better fix, but from a deeper listening. This is the power available to each of us. Your body is a living chronicle of your life. It holds the memory of your joys, your sorrows, your fears, and your triumphs. To listen to your body is to honor your own story. This practice of grounding ourselves in the physical landscape of the self is the essential first step. It brings our scattered awareness out of the chaotic traffic of our thoughts and anchors it in the tangible, undeniable reality of our physical being. It gives us a foundation, a place of stability from which we can navigate the more fluid and often more turbulent currents of the mind. This practice brings us home, providing a solid ground beneath our feet. From this place of grounded presence, we can now turn our attention to the most constant and faithful companion we have, the rhythm that connects our inner and outer worlds, the anchor in every storm. Our next conversation is with the gentle, life-giving flow of the breath. Having come home to the forgotten country of the body, we have found a place of grounding, a solid earth beneath our feet. This reconnects us with the tangible reality of our existence, pulling our scattered awareness out of the abstract ether of thought and into the truth of here and now. From this stable ground, we can now begin our second conversation. We turn our attention to an even more subtle, yet ever-present companion. It is the first thing we receive upon entering this world, and the last thing we release when we leave it. It is the quiet, unassuming rhythm of life itself, the gentle current of the air that sustains us. It is the breath. If the body is our home, the breath is the gentle atmosphere within it, the anchor that can hold us steady in any storm. The singular power of the breath as a tool for listening lies in its unwavering honesty about time. Your mind is a natural time traveler. It can, in an instant, leap back 20 years to a painful memory, or jump forward 20 years to a fearful projection. This is the source of so much of our anxiety and rumination, but the breath cannot do this. The breath knows only one moment, this one. You cannot breathe the breath you took yesterday, nor can you breathe the one you will take tomorrow. You can only experience the inhalation and exhalation that are happening right now. Therefore, to intentionally place your awareness on the breath is, by definition, to be in the present moment. It is the simplest, most direct, and most accessible portal back to reality, when the mind has been hijacked by the ghosts of the past or the phantoms of the future. When you are lost in thought, the breath is the thread that leads you out of the labyrinth. Here, the inner fixer will inevitably try to take control. As you bring your attention to your breath, the fixer will whisper, "You're not doing it right. It should be deeper. It should be slower. You should be more relaxed." This is the old habit of turning everything into a performance, a project to be graded. To listen to the breath is to do the opposite. The invitation is not to control the breath, but to feel it. It is to become a curious observer of a natural process that has been happening on its own since the moment you were born. The practice is one of releasing control, of surrendering to a rhythm that is already perfect. Gently, you can bring your awareness to the point where the breath is most vivid for you. For some, this is the sensation of the cool air entering the nostrils and the slightly warmer air flowing out. For others, it's the feeling of the chest expanding and contracting, or perhaps it's the gentle rise and fall of the abdomen, like a calm sea. There is no right or wrong place. The instruction is simply to rest your attention there, as you would rest your hand on the shoulder of a friend. Feel the entire journey of one single breath, from the moment it begins to the moment it ends, and the tiny, still pause before the next one begins. When you notice that your mind has wandered, which it will, because that is what minds do, you are not to judge or scold yourself. The wandering is not a failure. The moment you notice you have wandered is a moment of success, a moment of mindfulness. And in that moment, you gently, kindly, without any drama, escort your awareness back to the feeling of the breath. That is the entire practice. The gentle returning, over and over again. The breath is the ultimate bridge between our mind and our body. It is a physical, somatic event, yet it is exquisitely sensitive to our mental and emotional state. When your mind is agitated and fearful, your breath becomes shallow and rapid. When your mind is calm and at ease, your breath naturally becomes slow and deep. By bringing a calm, steady awareness to the breath, we can, in turn, send a message of safety and peace back to the mind. The breath becomes a gentle leash for the puppy of the mind. The puppy will constantly run off to chase a scent, a worry, a memory, a plan. We don't beat the puppy for being a puppy. We simply notice it has wandered off, and with infinite patience, we pick up the leash of the breath and gently guide it back to our side. Each time we do this, the connection becomes a little stronger. The mind learns, slowly, that it is safe to rest here, in the present moment. There is a beautiful series of Zen teachings, sometimes illustrated in a series of 10 pictures, known as the ox herding or buffalo herding story. It serves as a perfect parable for this process of listening to and befriending our own mind. In the story, a young herder decides he must find and tame a wild, powerful buffalo. This buffalo, often depicted as black and formidable, represents our untamed minddoer, raw, powerful energy of thoughts, habits, desires, and fears. The herder is our intention, our aspiration to find peace. The rope he carries is the practice of mindfulness, anchored in the breath. At first, the herder cannot even find the buffalo. He is simply lost in the wilderness, just as we are often completely lost in our thoughts, not even aware that we are thinking. Then, he discovers its tracks. This is the beginning of insight, when we start to see the patterns of our own mind. There is that worry again. There is that old resentment. After a great search, he catches a glimpse of the buffalo and manages to get a rope around its horns. A great struggle ensues. The buffalo, representing our deeply conditioned habits, pulls violently, trying to run back into the wild. This is the stage where meditation can feel like a battle, where the mind resists being present and seems more chaotic than ever. But the crucial lesson is in the herder's method. He does not try to kill the buffalo. He does not see its power and wildness as an enemy to be destroyed. He understands its energy is the very energy of life itself. His task is not to eliminate it, but to befriend it. Patiently, without violence, he holds the rope and gently guides the buffalo. Over time, through this gentle, persistent relationship, the buffalo grows tame. The struggle ceases. It begins to follow the herder willingly. Eventually, their connection is so deep that the herder can put down the rope and even ride on the buffalo's back, playing a flute as they journey home together under the moonlight. The wild mind has not been crushed. It has become an enlightened companion. Its powerful energy is no longer a source of chaos, but a source of joyful, peaceful expression. This is the promise of listening to the breath. The breath is our gentle rope. The practice is the patient, compassionate work of the herder. We are not at war with our minds. We are simply learning to guide our own powerful, beautiful, and wild energy back home to a place of peace. The goal is not a dead mind, but a liberated one. By listening to the body, we have found our ground. By listening to the breath, we have found our anchor. We have established a stable platform of presence within ourselves. We are no longer a dry leaf, tossed about by every gust of wind from our thinking mind. We have become a rooted tree, feeling the stability of the earth beneath us and aware of the life-giving air that moves through our leaves. This newfound stability is not an end in itself. It is a preparation. It gives us the courage and the steadiness to do the most challenging work of all, to turn and face the very things we have spent our lives trying to fix, flee from, or fight. With our feet planted firmly on the ground of the body, and our mind tethered gently to the anchor of the breath, we have cultivated a sanctuary of presence. We are now ready to undertake the most courageous act of listening. We are ready to turn toward our own suffering, not as a problem to be solved, but as a teacher to be understood. Our next conversation is with the first great truth of the human condition, the reality of dukkha. With the earth of the body beneath us and the anchor of the breath in hand, we have cultivated a portable sanctuary, a small clearing of peace within ourselves. This is not an escape. It is a home base. It is a place of strength from which we can venture out to do the most courageous work imaginable. This is the work of turning toward the truth of our own lives, especially the parts we have been taught to fear, ignore, or fix. The Buddha, in his role as a great spiritual physician, laid out a diagnostic and therapeutic framework for this work, a path known as the Four Noble Truths. These are not articles of faith to be blindly believed. They are 4 steps of a profound listening process, an invitation to see for ourselves the nature of our dis-ease and the possibility of our own freedom. Our journey now takes us to the first of these truths, the first step in any healing process, a brave and honest look at the ailment itself. The first noble truth is perhaps the most famously misunderstood statement in all of Eastern philosophy. It is often translated into English as life is suffering. Heard with a cynical ear, this sounds like a declaration of utter pessimism, a bleak and hopeless verdict on the human condition. The inner fixer hears this and either despairs, thinking, "See, it's all pointless," or it rebels, insisting, "No, life can be great if I just try hard enough." But both responses miss the profound and compassionate meaning of the original teaching. The word in the ancient Pali language is dukkha, and as we have touched upon, it means something far more subtle than just pain. It means friction, unsatisfactoriness, stress, the feeling of being perpetually off-kilter. A more accurate translation of the first noble truth would be, there is the experience of dukkha in life. This is not a metaphysical judgment on life's value. It is a diagnosis. It is the compassionate physician looking at us and saying, "I see. There is a fever. There is a tension. There is a sense of dis-ease here." This is not a pessimistic statement. It is the most hopeful statement possible, because a disease that is diagnosed can be treated. A problem that is seen can be understood. Our entire life, under the management of the inner fixer, has been a frantic attempt to deny this first truth. When a feeling of loneliness, anxiety, or boredom arises, our entire social and internal conditioning screams at us to run. Run toward distraction, run toward numbness, run toward another project, another relationship, another purchase. We are conditioned to believe that the presence of dukkha is a sign of personal failure. The practice of listening asks us to perform a radical act of rebellion against this conditioning. It asks us to stop running. It asks us to turn around, to face the direction we were fleeing from, and to look with gentle, steady eyes at what is actually there. The practice itself is this simple, though not always easy. When a difficult emotion or state arises, that familiar knot of anxiety, that gray cloud of sadness, that restless fire of irritation, we pause. We anchor ourselves in the body and the breath, and then we turn our awareness toward the feeling. We don't dive into the story behind the feeling. We don't analyze why it's there. We simply acknowledge its presence as a raw, physical, and energetic reality within us. We can even use a silent internal mantra. As you feel the anxiety, you can say to it, "In your heart, I see you. I know you are here." You are not saying "I like you" or "I want you to stay." You are simply offering the courtesy of your acknowledgement. You are treating your inner experience with the same simple respect you would offer a stranger who enters a room. "Hello, loneliness. I see you. Welcome, fear. I acknowledge your presence." This simple act of turning toward and acknowledging our pain is transformative. Its power is immense because suffering thrives in the darkness of denial and resistance. It is like a monster that lives in the cellar of our consciousness. As long as we keep the door locked and refuse to look at it, our imagination makes it terrifying. We hear its noises, we feel its threatening presence, and we spend all our energy making sure the door stays shut. Our fear of the monster becomes a bigger problem than the monster itself. The act of mindful acknowledgement is like taking a deep breath, unlocking the door, and shining a soft, steady light into the cellar. More often than not, what we find is not a terrifying monster at all, but a sad, neglected, and lonely part of ourselves, crying out for attention. When we turn the light of awareness on our pain, 2 things happen. First, we stop shooting ourselves with second arrows. The initial pain, the first arrow, is the dukkha itself. The second arrow is our resistance, our story about the pain. "This shouldn't be happening. I hate feeling this way. what's wrong with me? By simply acknowledging the feeling, this is anxiety, we stop the secondary battle. We drop the rope in the tug of war. The energy we were wasting on resistance is suddenly freed. Second, the act of acknowledging creates a space between us and the feeling. When you say, "I see my anxiety," you are implicitly recognizing that you are not your anxiety. You are the one who is seeing it. You are the awareness, the sky, and the anxiety is just a passing cloud. This shift from being consumed by the feeling to being the container for the feeling is the beginning of liberation. The pain may still be there, but it no longer defines your entire reality. It is held in a larger, calmer space. There is a dramatic story from the life of the Buddha that perfectly illustrates this principle of facing darkness with fearless presence. The story is of a notorious serial killer named Angulimala, whose name meant finger garland because he wore a necklace made from the fingers of his many victims. He was a figure of pure terror. Entire villages would empty when he was rumored to be near. He was the ultimate representation of violence, hatred, and suffering, the biggest, most terrifying problem imaginable. One day, the Buddha learned that Angulimala was in a nearby forest, and instead of avoiding the area as everyone else did, he began to walk calmly and mindfully down the road, leading directly into that forest. Angulimala saw the lone monk approaching and was astonished. Everyone ran from him. He shouted, "Stop, monk! Stop where you are!" The Buddha continued to walk at his steady, peaceful pace. Infuriated and amazed, Angulimala began to run after him. But a strange thing happened. Though he was running as fast as he could not catch up to the calmly walking Buddha. This is a beautiful metaphor for how the agitated, violent mind can never catch up to true, grounded peace. Exhausted, Angulimala screamed again, "Stop, ascetic! I command you to stop!" The Buddha, without breaking his stride, turned his head slightly and said the pivotal words, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not." Stunned, the killer asked what he meant. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped forever from doing harm to any living being. I have laid down the sword. But you have not stopped the killing. You have not stopped being driven by your hatred and delusion." In that moment, something shattered in Angulimala. No one had ever spoken to him this way. They had either run in terror or tried to fight him with violence. The Buddha did neither. He simply saw him, fully and without fear. He acknowledged the man behind the monster, speaking directly to his condition with unwavering, compassionate presence. This act of being truly seen, of being met with peace instead of fear, was so powerful that it broke the spell of Angulimala's rage. He threw down his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and in time became a monk, completely transforming his life. Our own inner demons, our deepest anxieties, our most painful traumas, our most shameful secrets are our own personal Angulimala. We spend our lives running from them or trying to wage war against them. The practice of listening to our suffering is the practice of the Buddha on that road. It is the practice of stopping. It is the practice of turning toward the thing that terrifies us and meeting it with a calm, steady, and kind presence. It is to say to our deepest pain, "I see you. I have stopped running. I will meet you here." What we often discover is that the moment we stop running, the monster stops chasing us. The first noble truth, then, is not a curse upon life. It is a profound and compassionate invitation. It is an invitation to stop the futile war against our own experience. It is a call to courage, asking us to simply be present for the truth of our own heart in all its complexity. By bravely acknowledging the presence of this dissatisfaction, this dukkha, we have completed the first and most vital step in our healing. We have named the ailment. A good physician, having identified the symptom, then proceeds to the next crucial question: what is its cause? To listen even more deeply, we must now investigate the origins of this inner friction. Our next conversation, therefore, is with the second great truth, the cause of our suffering. The physician has made a diagnosis. With a gentle and courageous listening, we have acknowledged the presence of dukkha, the pervasive fever of dissatisfaction that runs through a life of resistance. We have stopped running from the symptom and have offered it our calm presence. Now, the physician's compassionate investigation goes deeper. To truly heal an ailment, we must understand its root cause, not just its outward expression. It is not enough to know that the engine is rattling. We must find what is causing the rattle. The second noble truth offers us this crucial next step. It invites us to listen for the origin of our fever, to identify the source of the fire that creates the smoke of our suffering. And what it reveals is something both startlingly simple and profoundly empowering. The cause of dukkha, the Buddha explained, is a condition he called tanha. This Pali word is often translated as craving or desire, but its true meaning is closer to thirst. Think of the thirst you feel on a desperately hot day. It is not a gentle preference. It is a deep, primal, urgent demand. It consumes your attention and drives you to action. This is tanha. It is the deep, nagging thirst of the self for something other than what is present. It is the engine of the inner fixer. And this thirst, this craving, manifests in three primary ways. The first is the one we most easily recognize, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for a pleasant taste on the tongue, a beautiful sight for the eyes, a pleasing sound, a delightful scent, a comfortable feeling. It is the engine of consumer culture, the voice that whispers, "If only you had that delicious meal, that new phone, that perfect vacation, then you would be happy." It is the constant, restless seeking for the next hit of pleasant stimulation, a thirst that is temporarily slaked but never permanently quenched. The more we drink from this salt water, the thirstier we become. The second form of thirst is more subtle and more profound. It is the craving to become, the craving for existence. This is the thirst of the ego, the project of the self. It is the deep desire to be more successful, more intelligent, more loved, more respected, more spiritual. It is the engine of our ambition, our perfectionism, and our constant self-improvement. It is the voice that says, "When I finally achieve this goal, when I finally become this ideal version of myself, then my life will be complete." It is a craving for a permanent, solid, and satisfying identity, a state of being that is forever secure. This thirst is what drives us to endlessly build and polish the statue of me, terrified that if we stop, it will crumble. The third form of thirst is the shadow of the second. It is the craving for non-existence, or what we more commonly call aversion. This is the intense desire for an unpleasant experience to go away. It is the violent pushing away of reality. When a feeling of anxiety arises, the thirst for its non-existence is the desperate scramble to get rid of it. When we encounter a difficult person, the aversion is the immediate wish that they were not there. It is the recoiling from pain, the hatred of our own flaws, the deep wish that some parts of our past had never happened. This aversion is just as much a thirst as craving is. It is the thirst for a void, a thirst for something to cease. The fixer's voice is an expert in this language. Get rid of this feeling, it commands. Avoid that person. Suppress that memory. Look closely. And you will see that this three-pronged thirst craving for pleasure, craving to become, and craving to not experience is the very job description of the inner fixer. It is the operating system that runs all of our frantic mending and managing. The constant need to improve our lives, to solve our discomfort, to engineer a better future, is nothing more than a sophisticated manifestation of tanha. It is the fundamental belief that what is not good enough, and a relentless thirst for what could be. This thirst is the fire. Our resistance, our striving, our constant doing and fixing this is the fuel we keep throwing on that fire, and the heat, the smoke, the pervasive feeling of being burned. That is dukkha. To listen to this second truth is not to engage in an intellectual exercise. It is to become a scientist of your own inner experience. The practice is not to try and eliminate all your desires. That would be impossible. And the desire to have no desires is just another, very subtle form of tanha. The practice is simply to watch the mechanism of thirst in action with the same mindful, non-judgmental awareness we have been cultivating. When you finish a delicious meal, notice the moment the thought arises. I wish I could have more. Don't judge it, don't act on it, just see it. That is tanha. When you are standing in line, feeling a wave of impatience and boredom, notice the immediate, almost unconscious impulse to reach for your phone. Feel the discomfort of the boredom and the urgent pull of the desire for distraction. That is tanha. When someone criticizes you, feel the immediate, visceral reaction in your body, the tightening of the stomach, the heat rising in your face. This is aversion, the craving for this unpleasant experience to cease. Just watch it happen. You are observing the root of suffering as it arises in your own laboratory. In this observation, you begin to see, not as a theory, but as a lived reality, how you yourself participate in the creation of your own stress. You see the link. The thirst arises, you grasp onto it, and a moment later, the feeling of tension, of dukkha, follows. There is a classic parable that illustrates this self-trapping nature of tanha perfectly. It is the story of the monkey trap. In some parts of the world, hunters have a clever way of catching monkeys. They take a coconut or a gourd, hollow it out, and drill a hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit inside. They place a piece of sweet rice or some other treat inside the coconut and then secure it to the base of a tree. A monkey, drawn by the scent, will eventually approach. It will slip its slender, open hand into the hole and grasp the prize. Now its hand has become a clenched fist. But the hole was designed for an open hand, not a fist. The monkey tries to pull its hand out, but it is stuck. The hunter, who has been watching from a distance, begins to approach. The monkey shrieks in terror. It knows it is in danger. It could be free in an instant. All it has to do is one simple thing: let go of the rice. If it would only open its hand, it could slip it out of the trap and scamper up the tree to safety. But its craving, its tanha, is so powerful. Its grip on the prize is so tight that it cannot bring itself to let go. It will be captured and perhaps lose its very life because it is trapped by its own clinging. We are that monkey. The world presents us with countless coconuts filled with tempting bait, pleasant sensations, ideals of success, promises of security. We reach for them, we grasp them, and we form a clenched fist around them. Our suffering comes not from the coconut, not from the bait, not even from the hunter. It comes from our own refusal to open our hand. We are held captive by our own attachments and our own aversions. The desire to fix our lives is the clenching of the fist. The path of listening is the practice of learning, slowly and gently, how to relax our grip. The second noble truth is ultimately a message of profound hope. It is an empowering revelation. If the cause of our suffering were our genetics, our past, or the actions of other people, we would be a permanent victim. Our well-being would be forever outside of our control. But this truth tells us something radically different. It tells us that the primary cause of our dissatisfaction is not external. It is an internal process, an inner thirst, a habit of the mind. And if the cause is internal, then the possibility of healing is also within us. We are not a broken machine that needs a new part from the outside. We are the monkey who can, in any moment, choose to open its hand. By listening to the arising of tanha within us, by watching this mechanism of thirst and aversion without judgment, we see how we have been the unwitting architects of our own prisons. We see the fever of dukkha, and we now understand it is caused by the inner fire of our own clinging. A good physician, having listened to the symptom and now its cause, has completed the diagnosis. The next step is to speak of the prognosis, the possibility of health. Can this fire be cooled? Can this fever break? Our next conversation, guided by the third great truth, is one of immense hope. It is a listening for the possibility of silence, the reality of a cure. The physician has guided us through the quiet, honest examination of our condition. We have listened to the symptom, the pervasive fever of dissatisfaction called dukkha. We have listened to its cause, the inner fire of thirst and clinging called tanha. We have seen how the monkey of our mind is trapped, not by the cage, but by its own clenched fist. Standing here, with this diagnosis in hand, a crucial question arises, one filled with both fear and hope. Are we doomed to this cycle? Is life simply an endless oscillation between thirst and the temporary relief that only fuels more thirst? Is the best we can hope for a life spent managing our own self-inflicted wounds? The third noble truth is the physician's answer. It is the prognosis, and it is the most profoundly optimistic and liberating message imaginable. It asks us to listen not to a sound, but for a silence. The silence that is left when the fire of craving burns out. This silence, this possibility of a cure, is known by a word that is famous yet deeply misunderstood: nirvana, or in its original Pali form, nirodha, which means cessation or extinction. The inner fixer hears this word and conjures images of a dull, empty void, a passionless existence, or perhaps a fluffy, cloud-filled heaven disconnected from real life. But its true meaning is far more practical and immediate. The word nirvana literally means to blow out or to extinguish, as one blows out the flame of a candle. The question is, what is being extinguished? It is not our life, not our personality, not our joy. What is extinguished is the fire of tanha. It is the blowing out of the feverish flames of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the cessation of the relentless, exhausting thirst to fix, to grasp, to control, and to push away. Nirvana is not a place you go to after you die. It is a state you can realize in this very life. It is not something you must add to yourself, but rather the peace that is revealed when you stop piling on the fuel of craving. Think of it as the natural quiet of a room. If a loud, static-filled radio is blaring in the corner of the radio of the inner fixer of Tanha's room seems noisy and chaotic. The third noble truth does not suggest that we try to cover that noise with even louder, more pleasant music. It suggests that we simply walk over and turn the radio off. What is left? Silence. A peaceful, clear, and spacious silence that was there all along, merely obscured by the noise. This is nirodha. It is the mind's natural state, its inherent clarity, revealed when the static of our striving falls away. This silence is not an empty, lifeless void. That is the fear of the ego, the fixer, which believes that without its constant projects and dramas, there would be nothing left. But the silence of nirvana is not the silence of a tomb. It is the silence of a vast, star-filled desert sky. It is not empty. It is full of space, full of presence, full of a quiet, alert stillness that is pregnant with potential. It is not the absence of life, but the absence of struggle. It is the experience of life lived in flow, with a sense of ease and grace. It is the freedom of the monkey who has finally opened its hand. It is no longer tethered to the coconut trap. It is free to move, to play, to be. This is the ultimate freedom. Not the freedom to get everything you want, but the freedom from being a slave to your wanting. This state may sound lofty, like something reserved for saints and sages in remote caves. But the truth is, we have all tasted small moments of it. We have all had glimpses of little nirvanas in our own ordinary lives. Think of a time when you were completely absorbed in an activity. Perhaps you were playing a musical instrument, painting a picture, writing, or gardening. For a few moments, your sense of being a separate self who was doing the activity fell away. The constant inner commentary of the fixer went silent. There was no past, no future, only the joyful, present moment unfolding of the creative act. In that moment of flow, tanha was extinguished. There was no thirst for anything to be different. That was a taste of nirodha. Or think of a time you were walking in nature, overwhelmed by the beauty of a majestic mountain range or a fiery sunset. For a moment, your personal worries and projects seemed petty and insignificant. You were simply a part of a vast, beautiful whole. Your sense of self dissolved into a feeling of awe. That was a taste of nirodha. Think of the deep, quiet connection you feel when truly listening to another person, your self-consciousness forgotten. Or even consider the tiny, precious gap of silence between the end of your in-breath and the beginning of your out-breath. In these fleeting moments, the thirst stops. The project of the self is temporarily abandoned, and in its place is a feeling of peace, of completeness, of presence. The third noble truth tells us that these are not just random, happy accidents. They are windows into our true nature. The spiritual path is not about creating these moments, but about cultivating the conditions of mind and heart that allow them to arise more often and to become our more consistent reality. There is a simple, beautiful parable that perfectly illustrates this truth. Imagine you are holding a glass of water that is full of mud and silt. As it is, the water is cloudy, opaque, and undrinkable. This is our mind, clouded by the agitated sediment of our cravings, aversions, judgments, and fears. The inner fixer, seeing this murky water, believes it must do something to clean it. It grabs a spoon and starts stirring vigorously, hoping to separate the mud from the water. But what happens? The stirring only makes it worse, churning the sediment up and making the water even cloudier. It might try to pour the water through a filter or scoop out the mud, but every effortful action only continues the agitation. The striving itself is what perpetuates the problem. The wisdom of the third noble truth offers a radically different approach. It invites us to do the most counterintuitive thing: nothing. Simply set the glass down on a steady surface. Stop stirring. Let it be, and then watch. Without any further effort on our part, the natural laws of the universe take over. The mud and silt, being heavier than the water, slowly, gracefully begin to settle. Over time, they collect in a layer at the bottom of the glass, and the water above them reveals its own inherent nature. It becomes perfectly clear. The clarity was not something we had to add to the water. It was not something we had to create. It was its natural condition, merely obscured by the turmoil. We are this glass of water. Our innate nature, our basic consciousness, is clear, peaceful, and bright. Our suffering, our dukkha, is the cloudiness caused by the constant stirring of our minds by the spoon of tanha. The path to healing, the path to seeing our own clarity, is not more fixing, more analyzing, more effortful stirring. It is the practice of letting be. It is the cultivation of a stillness that allows the sediment of our conditioning to naturally settle. Listening to the third noble truth is like a parched traveler in a vast desert, finally hearing the distant sound of a waterfall. We now know that relief is not only possible, it is our birthright. The fever of dukkha can be cooled, the fire of tanha can be extinguished, revealing the clear, cool water of our innate peace. The diagnosis is complete. The prognosis is hopeful. All that remains is the physician's prescription, the treatment plan. If this state of peaceful clarity is possible, what is the path we must walk to allow the mud in our own glass to settle? Our final conversation in this series of 4 great truths is with the path itself, the practical, 8-fold way of life that leads from the noisy workshop of the fixer to the quiet, open field of freedom. The physician's work is now nearing its completion. We have listened to the diagnosis of our dis-ease, the fever of dukkha. We have listened to its underlying cause, the insatiable thirst of tanha. And we have listened for the prognosis, the hopeful promise that this fever can break, revealing the clear, cool silence of nirodha. The final step, the one that bridges understanding and transformation, is the prescription itself. It is the treatment plan. The fourth noble truth is not a single statement, but a comprehensive way of life, a practical path that guides us out of the labyrinth of our own making. This is the Noble Eightfold Path, and it is the ultimate expression of the art of listening. It is easy to hear the word path and imagine a rigid, linear set of rules, a moral checklist we must follow to become a good person. This is the fixer's interpretation, but that is not its spirit. A more skillful way to see the Eightfold Path is to imagine you are a musician, and your life is a beautiful, complex instrument, like a cello or a lute. For years, you have been playing it out of tune, creating sounds of discord, frustration, and pain. You have tried to fix it by playing harder, by polishing the wood, but the dissonance remained. The Eightfold Path is like being handed a tuner's guide. It is a set of 8 interconnected principles for skillfully and patiently tuning each string of your life. It is not about following rules. It is about creating harmony. When all 8 strings are brought into resonant alignment, the instrument of your life begins to produce the beautiful, clear music of freedom. The path is traditionally divided into 3 sections, each supporting the others in a beautiful synergy. The first is the foundation of wisdom, which involves tuning our very perception of reality. The first string is right view, or right understanding. This is the practice of listening to reality. It is the commitment to see things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be or fear them to be. It means deeply contemplating and beginning to see for ourselves the truths our physician has pointed out, the reality of dukkha, its cause in tanha, and the possibility of its cessation. It means looking at the world and seeing its impermanent, flowing, and interconnected nature. Right view is the antidote to the fixer's fundamental delusion that life is a solid, permanent, controllable project. It is about aligning our inner map with the actual territory of existence. Without a clear view of where we are, any step we take will be misguided. The second string of wisdom is right intention or right thought. This is the practice of listening to our motivation. Once our view begins to clear, we must choose the direction of our heart. Right intention guides us to consciously cultivate 3 wholesome qualities. First, the intention of renunciation, which is the intention to let go of clinging, to relax the clenched fist of tanha. Second, the intention of goodwill, the deliberate cultivation of friendliness and kindness, the opposite of aversion and hatred. Third, the intention of harmlessness or compassion, the wish that all beings, including ourselves, be free from suffering. Right. Intention is about purifying the why behind all our thoughts, words, and actions. It ensures we are tuning our instrument not with aggression, but with a gentle and loving hand. The next section of the path is ethical conduct, which is how our inner harmony expresses itself in the world. It is about living in a way that creates no further dissonance for ourselves or others. The third string is right speech. This is the art of listening before speaking. It asks us to become aware of the immense power of our words. On one level, it means refraining from lying, from speech that causes division between people, from harsh or abusive language, and from idle gossip that wastes our own and others' attention. But more deeply, it is the positive practice of using our words to heal, to encourage, to speak truths that are helpful and timely, and to create connection. Before we speak, we are invited to listen to our intention. Is this true? Is this kind? Is this necessary? The fourth string is right action. This is the practice of listening with our hands and our bodies. It is the commitment to act in ways that do not cause harm. The traditional formulation is to abstain from taking life, from taking what is not given, and from sexual conduct that is based on exploitation or harm. It is about moving through the world with a physical grace that respects the sanctity of all life, recognizing that our actions have consequences that ripple out into the world. The fifth string is right livelihood. This is listening through our work. It asks us to consider how we spend the great portion of our waking life. We are encouraged to find a way to support ourselves that does not harm other beings or the planet. This means avoiding livelihoods based on deception, such as false advertising, on violence, such as the arms trade, or on exploitation, such as the trade in human beings or the sale of intoxicants. It is a call to integrate our spiritual values with our professional life, so that our existence is not fractured, but whole. The final section is the heart of the inner work, mental discipline. This is the direct training of the mind, the tuning peg, that allows us to adjust the other strings with precision. The sixth string is right effort. This is skillful, listening effort. It is the absolute opposite of the fixer's brute force. It is the gentle, balanced, and wise effort of a gardener, tending the soil of the mind. This effort has 4 parts. The gentle effort to prevent unwholesome negative states of mind from arising, the effort to let go of them if they have already arisen, the joyful effort to encourage wholesome, positive states of mind to arise, and the effort to sustain those positive states once they are present. It is not a fight, but a wise cultivation. The 7th string is right mindfulness. This is the art of listening itself. This brings us full circle to the core practice we have been developing throughout our entire journey. It is the capacity to maintain a clear, non-judgmental, moment-to-moment awareness of our experience or body, our feelings, our mind states, and the nature of reality. Right mindfulness is the tuner's ear. It is the faculty that listens to the pitch of each of the other 7 strings, noticing when they are out of tune and guiding the gentle adjustments needed to bring them back into harmony. It is the very heart of the path. The 8th and final string is right concentration. This is the fruit of the other 7 practices, the experience of deep, sustained listening. As the mind becomes purer through ethical conduct and steadier through mindfulness and right effort, it gains the ability to rest, unified and unwavering, on a single object of attention. This is a state of profound peace, clarity, and stillness, free from distraction and agitation. It is in these states of deep concentration that the most profound insights into the nature of reality arise. This is the sound of the fully tuned instrument, resonating with a clear, pure, and unwavering note that fills the entire world. The Noble Eightfold Path is not a linear set of steps to be mastered in order. It is a wheel where each spoke is essential for the integrity of the whole. Or it is a spiral where we circle through the 8 factors again and again, each time at a deeper level. Living an ethical life makes it easier to calm the mind. A calm mind sees more clearly. A clear view inspires more compassionate action. Each part supports and deepens all the others. This is not a path of fixing ourselves into a perfect person. It is a path of tuning ourselves to the music of reality, learning to listen and respond to life with ever-increasing wisdom, compassion, and grace. Living this path of listening is not about arriving at a final destination, but about the quality of the journey itself. As we walk it, as we patiently tune the 8 strings of our life, our very perception of reality begins to shift profoundly. One of the first and most fundamental illusions to fall away is our old, painful relationship with change. The very thing the inner fixer tried so desperately to control impermanencies, now seen through new eyes, not as a threat, but as the beautiful, liberating, and inescapable music of life itself. Walking the Eightfold Path is like learning to read the book of reality in its native language. As we patiently tune the strings of our conduct, our effort, and our attention, our perception becomes clearer and more refined. We begin to see through the frantic projections of the inner fixer and perceive the world with a newfound intimacy. And one of the first and most profound truths that comes into sharp focus is the very thing that once caused us so much anxiety, the law of impermanence, or anicca. We have already acknowledged this truth intellectually, as the reason the fixer's attempts to control life always fail. But to walk the path of listening is to move from intellectual understanding to a deep, cellular knowing. It is to stop just reading about the river and to finally feel its current. This deep listening transforms impermanence from a terrifying bug in the system of life into its most fundamental, beautiful, and liberating feature. When we truly listen, with the quiet mind we have cultivated, we see this constant flow everywhere. We see it in the grand cycles of the world outside, the turning of the seasons, the slow erosion of a mountain, the fading of a photograph, the lines that appear on our own face in the mirror. But more importantly, we begin to observe it intimately within our own inner landscape. Our mind, which once seemed like a solid, singular entity, reveals itself to be more like the weather, a dynamic, unpredictable, and ceaseless pattern of change. One moment, a feeling of bright, expansive joy arises, like a patch of clear blue sky. We listen to it, feel its warmth, and notice that, like the sky, it is not static. A moment later, a thought cloud of worry may drift across it, casting a brief shadow. Then, a feeling of irritation may arise like a sudden gust of wind, only to be replaced by a calm stillness. The practice of mindfulness allows us to witness this inner weather pattern without getting swept away by it. We see that no feeling, no matter how intense, is a permanent fixture. No thought, no matter how compelling, is a final truth. They arise, they exist for a time, and they pass away, all on their own. The fixer's great mistake was to see a storm cloud of sadness and believe it was going to rain forever. Listening allows us to see the cloud for what it is, a temporary weather event in the vast, open sky of our awareness. This direct seeing, this intimate knowing of impermanence, is the key that unlocks a wiser and more graceful way of living. This wisdom fundamentally changes our relationship to pleasure and pain. When a pleasant experience arises, a moment of success, a feeling of love, a delicious taste, the fixer's mind, driven by tanha, immediately reacts with clinging. It grabs onto the experience, terrified of it ending. This is it. I need to hold on to this feeling forever. This very act of grasping introduces a subtle anxiety. We can no longer fully enjoy the pleasure because we are too busy worrying about its inevitable departure. But the mind that has listened to impermanence responds differently. It recognizes the pleasant experience as a beautiful, temporary gift. It savors the moment completely, immerses itself in the joy, precisely because it knows the moment is fleeting. It is like smelling a fragrant flower, taking in its full perfume without any illusion that the scent could be bottled forever. This allows for a purer, deeper, and less anxious experience of life's joys. Conversely, when a painful experience arises, difficult emotion, a physical ache, a setback in life, the fixer's mind panics. Believing this state to be permanent and solid, it declares an emergency. It fights, it resists, it despairs, shooting a volley of second arrows that turn pain into prolonged suffering. This is a catastrophe. I can't bear it. It will never end. But the mind that understands anicca, the mind that has watched countless other storm clouds come and go, meets the pain with a quiet, spacious wisdom. It acknowledges the pain of the first arrow without adding the terror of the second. It holds the difficulty with the deep, embodied knowledge that this, too, shall pass. This does not mean the pain magically disappears. It means we are able to endure it with more grace, patience, and courage. We are no longer a terrified child lost in a storm. We are a seasoned sailor who knows how to navigate rough seas, confident that calmer waters lie ahead. We learn to hold our joys and our sorrows with a lighter, more open hand. Far from making life seem meaningless, this deep appreciation of impermanence infuses every moment with a sacred, poignant preciousness. When we live under the illusion of permanence, we take life for granted. We assume there will always be a tomorrow to say I love you, to appreciate our health, to pursue a dream. We live in a state of perpetual postponement, but the wisdom of anicca is a powerful call to awaken now. It whispers to us that this breath, this conversation, this slant of afternoon light, this particular configuration of our life will never happen again in exactly the same way. It is unique, unrepeatable, and therefore infinitely precious. This realization dissolves our complacency. We begin to pay more attention. We listen more deeply to our loved ones. We find beauty in ordinary moments. We engage with our life not as a dress rehearsal, but as the main event. Impermanence is not a reason for despair. It is the ultimate reason to live fully and love deeply. There is no story that teaches this compassionate acceptance of impermanence more powerfully than that of Kisa Gotami and the mustard seed. Kisa Gotami was a young woman whose first and only child had died. She was consumed by a grief so absolute that she could not accept its reality. Cradling the lifeless body of her son, she wandered from house to house, desperately begging for a medicine that could restore him. The villagers, seeing her madness, pitied and shunned her, until one person suggested she go see the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her child at his feet, and pleaded for a cure. The Buddha, seeing her profound suffering, did not dismiss her or lecture her on the truth of death. He met her with immense compassion and gave her a task. He told her, "I can make the medicine you seek, but to do so, I need one ingredient. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from a house where no one and no child, no spouse, no parent, no servant thus ever died." Clinging to this sliver of hope, Kisa Gotami rushed back to the village. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course, I will give you a mustard seed." But when Kisa Gotami asked her crucial question, the woman's face fell. "Alas," she said, "my husband died last year." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Everyone was willing to share a mustard seed, but every family had been touched by death. One had lost a parent, another a sister, another a child. They told her, "The living are few, but the dead are many." As the sun began to set, Kisa Gotami sat by the side of the road, the truth of her search washing over her. She looked at the flickering lamps of the village, appearing and disappearing in the twilight. She realized that her own unbearable sorrow was not a unique curse. It was the shared, universal experience of all beings. The law of change and loss was not a personal punishment. It was the impersonal, inescapable nature of life itself. In that moment, her frantic, selfish grief dissolved into a vast, compassionate understanding. She was no longer alone in her pain. She took the body of her son to the charnel ground and returned to the Buddha, not for the mustard seed, but with the quiet, sober eyes of one who had awakened. The Buddha had not given her a magical fix for her problem. He had given her a wise and compassionate path to see the truth for herself. This is the essence of listening to change. It is the journey from the frantic grief of Kisa Gotami to her quiet understanding. It is the realization that fighting against the current of impermanence is the source of our deepest anguish, and that peace is found in learning to flow with it. As we learn to listen to the ceaseless river of change, both in the world outside and in the stream of our own consciousness, a startling and even more profound question begins to echo in the quiet spaces of our mind. If everything I identify with my body which ages, my feelings which fluctuate, my thoughts which appear and disappear is impermanent, then who am I? What is this self that I have spent a lifetime trying to protect, promote, and perfect? The next step on our path of listening takes us to the very root of our identity, to investigate the deepest and most subtle illusion of them all. The path of listening has guided us on a profound journey inward. We have learned to stand still and face our suffering. We have identified its cause in the restless thirst of our own minds. We have glimpsed the possibility of a peace that is our birthright. We have walked the eightfold road of an awakened life, and in doing so, we have come to see the transient, flowing nature of all experience. But as we listen to this ceaseless river of change, as we watch the clouds of our thoughts and feelings drift and dissolve, a final, startling question emerges from the silence. If my body is always changing, if my feelings are always in flux, if my thoughts are a fleeting parade, then who, exactly, is the I that is witnessing all of this? What is this self I have spent a lifetime defending, promoting, and trying to fix? Our path now leads us to the very heart of our identity, to listen for the listener, and to investigate the most subtle and powerful illusion of all. This is the teaching of anatta, or no self. Of all the insights offered by the listening path, this is often the most challenging to our Western minds, which are so deeply conditioned to believe in a solid, independent, and enduring self at the core of our being. We think of ourselves as a singular, continuous entity, the CEO in the control room of the brain, the unchanging driver of a changing vehicle. The teaching of anatta is not a nihilistic declaration that we do not exist. It is an invitation to investigate, with radical honesty, whether this concept of a separate, solid self holds up under careful observation. It is the final deconstruction of the project of the self, the revelation that the project manager we have been working for is, in fact, a ghost. To understand this, we can look at what we typically identify as me. We can start with the body. Is this body the permanent me? We have already seen that it is not. It is a constantly changing collection of cells, energy, and matter, borrowed from the earth and destined to return to it. It is different today than it was 7 years ago, and will be different again tomorrow. So, the body is not a fixed self. What about our feelings? Is a feeling me? We have also seen that feelings are like the weather, arising and passing away in response to conditions. We are not our joy, nor are we our sorrow. So feelings are not a fixed self. What then of our thoughts, our ideas, our memories? Surely these are the core of who we are. Yet when we watch our minds, we see that thoughts are even more ephemeral than feelings. They bubble up from nowhere, linger for a moment, and vanish. The thought, "I am hungry," arises and is replaced by, "I should check my email." Which one is the real me? Neither. They are transient mental events. When we investigate our experience in this way, component by component, we cannot find a single solid thing to point to and say, "There, that is the permanent, unchanging me." What we find instead is a process, a flowing, interconnected bundle of processes. We find form, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness all arising together, dependent on one another and on the world around them. The self is not a noun, it is a verb. It is not a thing, but an event that is constantly unfolding. The I is a story, a useful convention for navigating the world, but a story nonetheless. It is a label we apply to a dynamic, ever-changing process, like giving a name to a whirlwind. Let's take the act of listening itself. As you are listening to these words, who is the listener? Is there a little person, a homunculus, sitting inside your skull between your ears? Who is the listener? Or is there simply the process of hearing, a complex interplay of sound waves, eardrums, neural pathways, and consciousness, all arising together in this moment? When you look for a separate listener, you cannot find one. There is only the listening. When you feel an ache in your back, who is the feeler? Is it separate from the feeling itself? Or is there just the unified experience of feeling the ache? The doer dissolves into the doing. The thinker dissolves into the thinking. The fixer, the project manager, the central ego we have worked so hard for, when we look for it with the clear light of awareness, its throne is empty. For the part of us that is identified with being a solid self, this realization can feel terrifying. It can feel like annihilation. If I am not this permanent, separate being, then what am I? Am I nothing? This fear is the fixer's last stand, the ego's desperate attempt to maintain its own existence. But the wisdom of the path invites us to see this not as a loss, but as the ultimate liberation. It is not an annihilation, but an expansion. It is the dropping of an impossibly heavy burden. If there is no fixed, solid self to defend, think of the energy that is freed. All the energy we spend protecting our image, defending our opinions, and nursing our wounded pride can be released. The heavy armor of the ego, which we thought was keeping us safe, was actually a prison. Now we can lay it down. If the self is just a fluid process, then the concepts of success and failure lose their sting. They become temporary labels for passing events, not permanent verdicts on our core being. A moment of failure is just a moment of failure. It does not define me. A moment of praise is just a moment of praise. It does not inflate me. We become less fragile, more resilient, and more open to taking risks and learning from our mistakes. And perhaps most beautifully, the illusion of being a separate self is the root of our deepest loneliness. To feel that you are a singular, isolated entity in a vast universe is a recipe for fear and alienation. To realize that you are an inseparable part of a vast, interconnected process is to come home to the family of all things. There is a timeless Zen analogy that captures this shift in identity perfectly. Imagine a single wave rising on the surface of the great ocean. The wave has a specific shape, a height, a lifespan. It is born from the swell, it travels for a time, and it dissolves into foam on the shore. From the perspective of the wave, it might have a strong sense of its own separate identity. I am this wave. I am bigger than that wave over there, but smaller than that one. My journey is unique, and it might live in constant fear of its end, the moment it will crash on the beach and cease to be a wave. But what is the wave's true nature? Is it anything other than water? Its very substance, its essence, is the ocean. It was never truly separate. Its rising was simply the ocean, expressing itself in a temporary form. Its crashing is simply the ocean returning to itself. The wave's fear comes from its mistaken identity as a separate wave. Its peace, its liberation, would come from realizing its true identity as the ocean itself. When it knows it is water, the fear of dying as a wave becomes irrelevant. We are all like that wave. We have a name, a body, a personality, a story. We identify with this temporary form, and we live in fear of its inevitable dissolution. The wisdom of anatta, of no self, is the realization of our true nature. It is the shift in identity from the finite, separate wave to the vast, timeless, and interconnected ocean of life. We are not a lonely noun, but a universal verb. We are a temporary, precious, and unique expression of the entire cosmos. This profound realization that the separate self we've worked so hard to fix is an illusionist, the key that unlocks the prison door. It is not the end of the path, but the beginning of a truly free life. It allows us to live with more lightness, more joy, more courage, and a deep, unshakable sense of connection. With this liberating wisdom as our guide, we can now turn our attention from the deep, inner landscape to the world we inhabit every day. How does this practice of deep listening, this radical understanding of impermanence and no self, help us navigate the specific, concrete challenges of our modern lives, starting with the very screens that glow in our hands and the relentless noise that pours from them? The deep and liberating insights of the listening path, the truths of impermanence, suffering, and no self-care, not meant to remain as abstract philosophies. They are practical tools, lenses through which we can see our world more clearly and engage with it more skillfully. And there is no area of our modern lives that calls for this clarity more urgently than our relationship with technology. We carry in our pockets a small, glowing rectangle of glass and metal that is arguably the most powerful engine of distraction and craving ever invented. Having explored the inner landscape, we now turn our gaze outward, to listen to the noise of the digital world and learn to navigate it with the quiet wisdom we have cultivated. To understand our relationship with technology, we must first understand its business model. Most of the platforms, apps, and feeds we use are not designed for our well-being. They are designed for a single purpose: to capture and hold our attention for as long as possible. Because our attention is the product they sell to advertisers. This is the attention economy, and the methods used to capture our attention are a masterclass in exploiting the very mechanisms of tanha, the thirst for more, that we have just examined. The infinite scroll on a social media feed is a perfect example. It has no end point, no bottom of the page to signal that it is time to stop. It offers a bottomless well of novelty, tapping directly into our brain's craving for new stimulation. The bright red dot of a notification creates a sense of manufactured urgency, preying on our fear of missing out, our deep craving to be included and to exist within the social sphere. Likes, comments, and shares are delivered on an unpredictable schedule, just like a slot machine, providing intermittent rewards of validation that keep us coming back again and again, addicted to the thirst for approval. This entire digital ecosystem is the polar opposite of the world of deep listening. It is engineered to promote instantaneous, unconscious reaction, not mindful, considered response. It encourages a state of passive, numb consumption, not active, engaged presence. It shatters our focus into 1,000 tiny fragments, making the deep, sustained concentration required for meaningful work, connection, or peace almost impossible. The inner fixer thrives in this environment. It loves the constant distraction from uncomfortable feelings and the endless opportunities for social comparison and self-judgment. If the path of listening is about turning down the radio of static to hear the quiet music of reality, the digital world is a constant attempt to turn that radio up to full volume. The practice of listening, therefore, must be extended to our digital lives. This is the practice of digital mindfulness. It is not about throwing away our devices, but about learning to use them with the same intentionality and awareness we bring to our breath. The first step is to practice the why pause. Before your hand reflexively reaches for your phone, pause for the length of a single conscious breath. In that brief space, ask yourself a simple question. Why am I picking this up right now? What is my intention? Is it to look up a specific piece of information, to send a message of kindness to a friend, or to create something beautiful? These are skillful intentions. Or, are you picking it up to escape a feeling of boredom, to numb a pang of loneliness, to distract yourself from a difficult task? This is the pull of tanha. Simply noticing the why, without judging it, interrupts the cycle of unconscious habit and gives you back your power of choice. The next practice is to listen to the urge itself. When your phone buzzes in your pocket, or you feel that familiar mental itch to check for notifications, try a small experiment. Instead of immediately obeying the impulse, just for a moment, turn your awareness toward it. What does the urge actually feel like in your body? Is it a vibration in your chest, a tension in your shoulders, a restless energy in your hands? Treat the urge like any other sensation you might observe in meditation. See it as an impersonal, impermanent event. Watch it arise, feel its peak, and notice how, if you don't feed it, it will eventually subside on its own. By observing the urge instead of being a slave to it, you see it for what it is, a fleeting cloud, not an unbreakable command. You are learning to befriend your own monkey mind, even as the world offers it an endless supply of coconuts. To support this practice, it is incredibly helpful to create intentional boundaries, to carve out sacred time and space that is free from the digital noise. This could be as simple as leaving your phone in another room during meals, so you can listen to your food and the people you are with. It could mean declaring the first hour of your day a screen-free zone, allowing your mind to awaken to its own rhythm, rather than the rhythm of the world's demands. Or you could practice a digital Sabbath, setting aside one day a week to turn off your devices completely. Imagine a woman named Claire, living a life that is a familiar blur of work, notifications, and endless scrolling. She feels anxious, fragmented, and disconnected from her own life. As a radical experiment, she decides to turn her phone off for a full Saturday. The first few hours are agonizing. Her hand keeps reaching for a phone that isn't there. She feels a profound restlessness, a deep, uncomfortable boredom. This is the cry of her thirsty mind, suddenly cut off from its usual drink. But instead of giving in, she remembers the practice of listening. She sits with the uncomfortable restlessness. She listens to it, and then she begins to listen to the world around her. She hears the complex symphony of birdsong outside her window for the first time in years. She makes a cup of tea and, with nothing else to do, She tastes it, truly tastes it, noticing the warmth of the mug, the scent of the steam, the subtle flavors. She goes for a walk without headphones and listens to the sound of her own footsteps, the rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children. The world, which had become a flat backdrop to her glowing screen, slowly comes into focus. It reveals itself as a place of rich, vibrant, high-definition sensory experience. The boredom she feared transforms into a feeling of spaciousness, of peace. When she turns her phone back on the next day, the constant barrage of alerts and updates feels jarring, artificial, and strangely unimportant. She hasn't rejected technology. She has recalibrated her nervous system to the pace of real life. This is the ultimate goal: to transform our devices from masters into tools. For many of us now, the phone is the master. It summons, and we come. It presents its endless feed, and we consume. It dictates the rhythm and texture of our days. The path of digital mindfulness is the process of reclaiming our sovereignty. We become the master. We decide, with intention, when and why we will pick up this powerful tool. We use it to serve our deepest value, to connect, to learn, to create, rather than being used by it to serve the goals of the attention economy. Where we place our attention is the greatest choice we make, for our attention is the very currency of our life. What we pay attention to becomes our reality. The constant noise of the digital world presents a formidable challenge to the listening path, but it is also an incredible training ground. Every buzz, every notification, every urge to scroll is an opportunity to practice. It is a chance to pause, to breathe, to ask why, and to choose freedom over reactivity. By learning to navigate this digital storm with intention, we reclaim the precious ground of our own awareness. We learn to cultivate a space of inner quiet, even amidst the most relentless outer noise. This newfound presence has the power to transform not only our relationship with ourselves and our devices, but also the very fabric of our human connections. How then can we bring this same deep, non-judgmental listening into our conversations with the people we love, our colleagues, and even those with whom we disagree? Our next conversation explores the art of listening to others. Having learned to quiet the relentless noise of the digital world, we reclaim the most precious resource we possess, our own presence. We discover that by creating pockets of silence, we can once again hear the subtle, beautiful music of our own lives. But this reclaimed presence is not meant to be hoarded for ourselves alone. One of the most profound and generous things we can do with this gift is to offer it to others. The art of deep listening, cultivated in the quiet of our own practice, finds its fullest expression when we turn toward another human being and offer them the sanctuary of our undivided attention. This is the practice of compassionate communication, and it has the power to heal relationships, dissolve conflict, and build connections of astonishing depth. For most of us, most of the time, what we call listening is not listening at all. It is a collection of habits driven by the inner fixer, the ego that is always centered on its own agenda. One of the most common forms is listening to reply. While another person is speaking, our mind is not with them. It is racing ahead, formulating our response, searching for a clever anecdote, preparing our counter-argument. We are not hearing their words. We are waiting for the gap where we can insert our own. The conversation becomes a series of disconnected monologues, a competitive sport rather than a shared exploration. Another common habit is listening to judge. As someone shares their experience, our mind becomes a courtroom. We sift their words through the filter of our own beliefs, opinions, and life history. We silently issue verdicts. That was a foolish thing to do. I would have handled that differently. They are wrong to feel that way. We are not trying to understand their world from the inside out. We are trying to fit their experience into the narrow box of our own. This form of listening is arrogant and isolating. It creates a wall where there could be a bridge. Perhaps the most well-intentioned, yet often most harmful habit is listening to fix. This is the fixer's specialty, especially with those we love. A friend comes to us with a problem, expressing their pain or confusion. Immediately, our mind leaps into solution mode. We cut them off to offer unsolicited advice. We tell them to look on the bright side, or we rush to minimize their feelings because their pain makes us feel uncomfortable. We are not truly listening to their suffering. We are trying to make it go away as quickly as possible. In our haste to be a problem solver, we inadvertently send a powerful message. Your feelings are not valid. Your experience is a problem that I need to fix. This can leave the other person feeling unheard, invalidated, and even more alone. Compassionate listening, the practice of the listening path, is a radical departure from these habits. It is the application of mindfulness to the act of conversation. It begins with the simple, powerful act of offering your presence. This means putting down your phone, turning away from your screen, making gentle eye contact, and orienting your body toward the other person. These simple physical acts communicate a powerful message. For this moment, you are the most important thing in my world. I am here with you and for you. With this foundation of presence, we then cultivate a space of safety. This space is created by consciously suspending our judgment. We make a gentle, internal commitment to listen only to understand. We let go of our need to be right, our need to have an answer, our need to fix. Our only goal is to see the world through their eyes, to feel the situation from their heart. We listen not just to the words, the surface story, but for the feelings that lie beneath them. A person might be talking about a frustrating day at the office, but with deep listening, we can hear the underlying notes of fear, of feeling unappreciated, of exhaustion. We listen to the storyteller, not just the story. The greatest gift we can give another person is the safe space to be fully themselves, in all their messy, contradictory, and beautiful humanity. There is a beautiful teaching from the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh about the practice of watering the flowers. He taught that within every person, there is a garden containing all kinds of seeds. There are seeds of positive qualities, joy, kindness, courage, understanding, which he called flowers. And there are seeds of negative qualities, anger, fear, jealousy, despair, which he called weeds. The seeds that grow into strong plants are the ones that get watered most often. In many of our relationships, especially long-term ones, our communication can become a habit of watering the weeds. We focus on what is wrong. We criticize, we complain, we remind our partner or our child of their faults. This, of course, only makes the weeds of anger, resentment, and low self-worth grow stronger in them and in ourselves. The practice of compassionate communication is the practice of deliberately watering the flowers. It is the conscious choice to look for the good, the beautiful, and the strong in the other person, and to speak to it. This is not about empty flattery or ignoring real problems. It is about acknowledging the whole truth of a person. It is saying to a partner, "I saw how patient you were with your mother on the phone, and it really touched me." It is saying to a child, "I admire how you kept trying with that difficult homework, even when you were frustrated. You showed real courage." When we water the flowers in another person, we help them see the best in themselves. We give their wholesome seeds the light and attention they need to grow. This practice can, over time, completely transform the climate of a relationship from a battlefield of criticism into a garden of mutual appreciation. This way of listening is profoundly healing, not just for the person being heard, but for the listener as well. To be truly seen and heard, without judgment or agenda, is a fundamental human need. It is a form of love. When we offer this gift to someone, we are providing them with the space they need to untangle their own thoughts and feelings. Often, the solution to their problem will emerge from their own heart, simply because they were given the chance to speak it into a safe and loving silence. For the listener, the practice is a profound meditation. By focusing our full attention on another person with an attitude of compassion, Our own chattering ego, our own inner fixer, naturally falls silent. For a few precious moments, we get a vacation from our own dramas, our own projects, our own anxieties. We step out of the narrow prison of the self and into the wide, open space of connection. Learning to listen to others in this way is a practice that can heal families, mend friendships, and bridge the deepest divides. It teaches us that presence is one of the most powerful forms of love. But what happens when the cry of suffering that we need to listen to is not coming from another person, but from within our own heart? What do we do when the difficult voice we need to meet with compassion is the voice of our own anger, our own fear, or our own grief? Our next conversation is perhaps the most intimate and challenging of all. Learning to turn this same quality of deep, kind listening toward the difficult guests in our own minds. Having learned to offer the gift of our listening to the world around us, to the digital noise, and to the hearts of other people, we must now turn this compassionate attention toward the most challenging territory of all, our own inner emotional landscape. Within each of us is a cast of characters, a host of inner guests. Some are pleasant and easy to be with, joy, contentment, excitement. We welcome them readily. But others are more difficult. They arrive uninvited, often in the middle of the night. Their names are anger, fear, grief, and shame. Our lifelong training, orchestrated by the inner fixer, has taught us to treat these guests as enemies. When they knock on the door, we either pretend we are not home, barricade the entrance, or try to chase them away with force. But the path of listening suggests a radically different approach. It asks us to see these difficult emotions not as monsters to be slain, but as misunderstood messengers to be received. Messengers who often carry the most vital information for our healing and growth. The first step in changing our relationship with these emotions is to abandon the fixer's simplistic labels of good and bad. An emotion, at its core, is simply energy and information moving through the body. It is a form of primal, pre-verbal intelligence. A storm is not bad. It is a powerful weather pattern with its own causes and effects. In the same way, an emotion is not inherently bad. It is a natural response of our organism to our inner or outer environment. The problem is never the emotion itself, but our reactive, unconscious relationship to it. When we stop condemning these feelings, we can begin to listen to the messages they carry. Listen to anger. We are taught that anger is toxic, destructive, and unspiritual. And when it is expressed unconsciously, it certainly can be. But at its root, anger is a messenger of incredible strength and clarity. It often arises when a boundary has been violated, when something we hold sacred is being threatened, or when we witness an injustice. It is a surge of energy designed to say, "Number, this is not acceptable." It is the energy of protection, of integrity, of the fierce love that defends the vulnerable. To simply suppress anger is to silence a vital part of our own life force. To listen to anger is to ask, what boundary has been crossed? What needs to be protected? Listen to fear. Fear is perhaps the most maligned emotion of all. We are told to be fearless, to conquer our fear. But fear is one of our oldest and most faithful protectors. It is a deeply intelligent system designed to alert us to potential danger, whether physical or emotional. It is the messenger that says, "Be careful, pay attention, proceed with caution." The problem is not the signal of fear itself, but our reaction to it. We often fear the feeling of fear, creating a painful secondary loop of anxiety. To listen to fear is to thank it for its intention to protect us, and then to investigate with wisdom. Is the threat real or imagined? What is the wise and courageous way to respond to this situation? Listen to grief and sadness. In a culture that worships happiness, sadness is often seen as a failure, a state to be medicated or fixed as quickly as possible. But grief is not a problem, it is a process. It is the natural, healthy, and honorable response to loss. It is the texture of love in the absence of the beloved. To deny our grief is to deny our love. To listen to our sadness is to allow ourselves the time and space to honor what we have lost, to let the waves of sorrow wash through us, cleansing and clearing the way for a new landscape to emerge. To practice this deep listening with our most challenging emotions, there is a powerful and compassionate method summarized by the acronym RAIN, a practice popularized by the mindfulness teacher Tara Brach. It provides a 4-step guide to becoming a wise and kind host to our inner guests. The first step is R, recognize. This is the simple, mindful act of acknowledging what is present. When a strong emotion arises, we pause and gently name it to ourselves. Ah, anger is here. This is the feeling of shame. Sadness is visiting. This step alone is powerful. It stops the cycle of denial and brings us into the truth of the present moment. We are no longer pretending we are not home. We are acknowledging the knock at the door. The second step is A, allow. This is the radical part. We give the emotion permission to be there. We stop fighting it. This does not mean we like it or want it to stay forever. It simply means we cease our inner war against it. We unclench the fist of our resistance. We can whisper to ourselves, this is allowed to be here, or let be. This step immediately stops the creation of second arrows. We are no longer compounding the pain of the emotion with the pain of our struggle against it. The third step is I, investigate. Now that we have allowed the feeling to be present, we approach it with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity. We become a kind scientist of our inner world. We might ask, what does this actually feel like in my body? We drop the story and the label of anger and explore its raw, physical sensations. Where is it located? Is it hot or cold? Is it vibrating, solid, or spacious? This brings us out of our heads and into our bodies. We might also ask with a kind heart, what does this feeling believe? What does this vulnerable part of me need right now? This is not a harsh interrogation, but a tender inquiry. We are listening to the messenger's story. The final step is N, nurture. Having recognized, allowed, and investigated this vulnerable part of ourselves, we now offer it what it needs. This is the practice of active self-compassion. We might place a hand over our heart, feeling the warmth and gentle pressure. We might offer ourselves silent words of kindness, the words we would offer a beloved friend in the same situation. It's okay, sweetheart. This is so hard. I'm here with you. In this step, we are learning to become our own caregiver, to offer ourselves the soothing and safety that we so often seek from the outside world. There is a wonderful story that illustrates this entire practice. The Buddha spoke often of a being named Mara, who was the personification of all temptation, fear, and delusion, the ultimate difficult guest. In many stories, when Mara would appear, the Buddha's disciples would become agitated and want to fight him, to drive him away. But the Buddha's approach was different. When he sensed Mara's presence, he would calmly say to his attendant, "Ananda, please prepare a seat. We have a visitor." He would acknowledge Mara, saying, "I see you, Mara." He would then invite this personification of his own inner demons to sit with him, perhaps even offering him a cup of tea. He met his deepest fears not with a sword, but with a welcome. By offering this radical, fearless hospitality, by being willing to be present with his own inner darkness, the Buddha took away all of its power. A demon that is invited for tea is no longer a demon. It has been disarmed by compassion. The practice of rain is our way of learning to invite Mara for tea. It is a way to transform our relationship with our own hearts, moving from one of conflict to one of compassionate friendship. This is not about letting our emotions run wild and control our actions. It is the opposite. It is about holding them with such a spacious and kind awareness that they no longer need to scream to be heard. They can deliver their message, feel our compassionate presence, and then, like any visitor, they will eventually move on. The inner peace we cultivate by making friends with our own hearts is not a fragile thing, to be kept on a meditation cushion, separate from the real world. It is a resilient, dynamic quality that we can carry with us into every area of our lives, even into the often stressful arenas of work and ambition. How then do we reconcile this path of acceptance and inner listening with the drive to succeed and contribute in a competitive world? Our next conversation explores the possibility of a mindful ambition. The inner peace we cultivate by making friends with our own hearts is not a fragile treasure to be locked away, safe from the complexities of the world. It is a resilient and dynamic quality, a source of strength that we can carry with us into every arena of our lives. But for many of us, there seems to be a great wall between our spiritual practice and our professional life. The world of work, with its demands for competition, striving, and achievement, seems fundamentally at odds with a path of acceptance, letting go, and inner quiet. We are left with a difficult question. Must we choose between our inner peace and our outer success? The path of listening suggests that this is a false choice. It does not ask us to abandon our ambitions, but invites us to transform them, to infuse them with a wisdom that makes our work not a source of stress, but a field for practice and a vehicle for profound contribution. To begin, we must listen to the motivation behind our ambition itself. There are two very different kinds of ambition, arising from two different states of mind. The first is ambition from lack. This is the ambition of the inner fixer. It is rooted in the deep-seated belief that we are fundamentally inadequate, that there is something wrong with us that must be fixed by external achievement. This ambition is fueled by tanha, the thirst to become. It whispers, if you get that promotion, if you earn that much money, if you gain that recognition, then you will finally be worthy. Then the feeling of inadequacy will disappear. This ambition is anxious, restless, and often competitive. It is obsessively focused on the outcome, the destination, while viewing the process of work as a necessary evil to be endured. The success it seeks is a cure for a perceived inner flaw, and because that flaw is an illusion, the success it achieves is always hollow, leaving us thirsty for the next goal on the horizon. The second kind of ambition is ambition from fullness, or what we can call mindful ambition. This ambition arises not from a sense of lack, but from a desire to share our unique gifts and contribute to the world. It is rooted in our deepest values, in our innate human desire to create, to connect, to serve, and to solve problems. Its driving question is not, what can I get to fix myself, but what can I offer from the best part of myself? This ambition is patient, joyful, and often collaborative. It is not obsessed with the future outcome, but finds deep satisfaction in the process of the work itself. It is the ambition of the artist lost in their craft, the scientist captivated by a question, the teacher devoted to their students. This form of ambition does not deplete our energy, it renews it, because it aligns our daily actions with our authentic purpose. The practice of listening at work is the practice of shifting from the first kind of ambition to the second. This is done by weaving the threads of mindfulness into the very fabric of our workday. In a culture that glorifies multitasking, we can practice the radical act of single tasking. When you are writing an email, just write the email. Feel the sensation of your fingers on the keyboard. See the words as they appear on the screen. Let your entire world shrink to that one activity. When you are in a meeting, just be in the meeting. Resist the urge to check your phone under the table. Instead, practice the compassionate communication we have explored. Truly listen to your colleagues, seeking to understand their perspective rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. This practice not only reduces the mental friction and stress of a fragmented mind, but it dramatically increases our effectiveness and creativity. We can also pepper our day with mindful pauses. The moment before you answer a ringing phone, take one conscious breath. As you walk from your desk to the break room, feel the sensation of your feet on the floor. While waiting for a document to print, instead of anxiously checking your notifications, look out a window and notice the color of the sky. These small moments of returning to our senses are like hitting a reset button for the nervous system. They prevent the cumulative buildup of stress and allow us to approach each new task with a fresh, clear mind. We can even do a mini body scan while sitting at our desk, listening for the tension in our shoulders, our jaw, or our stomach, and inviting those areas to soften with our kind attention. There is a timeless story of a student watching a master potter at his wheel. The student is mesmerized. The master's hands move with a grace and certainty that seems almost magical, and from the spinning lump of clay, one exquisite, perfectly formed pot emerges after another. Finally, the student musters the courage to ask, "Master, your skill is astonishing. How do you manage to create such a perfect pot every single time? What is your secret?" The master smiles, his hands still gently guiding the clay. "I have never once in my life," he says, "tried to make a perfect pot." The student, bewildered, asks him to explain. "The idea of a perfect pot lives in the future," the master continues. "To chase it is to live in a state of anxiety. When I sit at this wheel, my mind is not on the finished product. My mind is here. I listen to the clay. I feel its willingness, its resistance. I listen to the rhythm of the wheel. I listen to the feeling of the water on my hands. My entire universe becomes this one intimate dance of hands, clay, and wheel. My only goal is to be fully present for this dance." He pauses, centering a new piece of clay. "The beautiful pots," he says softly, "they are not my goal. They are simply the memories left behind by these moments of perfect attention. They are the happy accidents that occur when you fall in love with the process, not the product. This is the essence of mindful ambition. True excellence is not the result of a desperate, anxious striving for a future outcome. It is the natural, unavoidable byproduct of giving our full, loving attention to the process at hand. This invites us to redefine our concept of success. In the fixer's world, success is measured by external metrics, titles, salary, awards. In the world of the listener, success is measured by internal qualities. A successful day is not one where we achieve inbox zero, but one where we maintain our inner peace amidst the chaos. A successful meeting is not one where we win the argument, but one where we foster a sense of mutual understanding and respect. True success is the feeling of living in alignment with our deepest values: presence, integrity, kindness, and contribution moment by moment, day by day. Any external rewards that come are a welcome bonus, not the central aim of our life. This approach transforms our work from a source of stress into a rich field for our spiritual practice. Every challenging colleague is an opportunity to practice compassion. Every tedious task is a chance to cultivate patience and presence. Every success is an opportunity to practice gratitude and humility. By infusing our work with this quality of deep listening, our ambition shifts from a frantic need to prove ourselves into a joyful expression of our purpose. The focus moves from me and my needs to we and what we can create together. We begin to see the humanity in our colleagues, the value in our customers, and the interconnectedness of our efforts. This growing sense of care, this heartfelt response to the joys and sorrows of the people our work touches, has a name. It is the natural blossoming of compassion. Our next conversation explores how deep listening, practiced in every area of our lives, inevitably gives rise to this most noble and healing quality of the human heart. When we learn to bring our listening into the world of our work, our ambition transforms. It shifts from a selfish need to prove our worth into a selfless desire to offer our gifts. The focus moves from me to we. This turning of the heart, from a clenched fist of getting to an open hand of giving, is the fertile ground from which one of the most beautiful qualities of the human spirit naturally blossoms. This quality is compassion, or in the ancient language of the path, karuna. Compassion is not something we manufacture through willpower or force upon ourselves because we feel we should be more compassionate. It is the spontaneous, tender, and powerful response of a heart that has learned to truly listen to suffering, both in itself and in others. The journey into compassion begins at home, within our own being. For years, the inner fixer treated our own difficult emotions as enemies. When sadness or fear arose, it met them with judgment, criticism, and aversion. This is an act of inner violence, a constant civil war waged against ourselves. But as we have learned to practice the art of listening, perhaps through the gentle steps of rain, our relationship with ourselves begins to change. We learn to meet our own anxiety not with a command to disappear, but with a gentle acknowledgement, "I see you are here." We learn to hold our own sorrow not with frantic distraction, but with the quiet permission for it to exist. We learn to offer a nurturing presence to the most vulnerable parts of ourselves. This practice of meeting our own pain with kindness, patience, and understanding is self-compassion. Self-compassion is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It is simply the act of ending the inner war. It is treating ourselves with the same warmth and care that we would instinctively offer to a dear friend who was struggling. This is the essential foundation. We cannot offer a cool cup of water to another if our own well is dry. We cannot offer genuine, heartfelt compassion to the world if we are still at war with ourselves. By learning to listen to and care for our own suffering, we fill our own well. We cultivate a reservoir of kindness that can then naturally overflow to others. As this self-compassion grows, it changes how we listen to the world. When we sit with another person and truly hear their story, something magical begins to happen. Before, we might have heard their words through the filters of our own opinions and judgments. But now, having listened to our own heart, we hear them differently. We hear them speak of their fear of failure, and in their voice, we recognize the echo of our own deepest fears. We hear them describe the pain of a loss, and we remember the physical ache of our own grief. We see them struggle with insecurity, and we feel a deep resonance with our own lifelong quest for worthiness. In this shared space of listening, the categories that we use to separate ourselves from others, our beliefs, our backgrounds, our successes, and failures begin to seem thin and illusory. Beneath the surface of our unique stories, we discover a universal bedrock of shared human experience. We all know the sting of disappointment. We all know the warmth of love. We all know the fear of the unknown. Suffering, we realize, is not a personal problem. It is a human condition. The hard, sharp line between my pain and your pain begins to soften and dissolve. This profound recognition of our shared vulnerability is the very birthplace of true compassion. It is crucial here to distinguish compassion from its shallower cousin, pity. Pity looks down from above. It says, "Oh, that poor person, I am so fortunate that I am not in their situation." Pity creates distance. It reinforces the illusion of a separate, superior self. The inner fixer is capable of pity because it bolsters its own position. But compassion is a feeling of resonance, of shared humanity. It arises from the understanding that we are on the same level. It does not say, "Poor you." It says, "I understand. This is a part of our journey together. May you be free from this difficulty." Empathy is the ability to feel with another. Compassion adds a crucial element, the active, heartfelt wish for their suffering to be alleviated. It is wisdom and love combined in action. It does not burn us out, because it is not based on absorbing another's pain, but on connecting with them through a spacious and loving heart. There is a story from the life of the Buddha that embodies this quality of karuna in its purest form. In the community of monks, there was one who had fallen gravely ill with a foul disease, perhaps dysentery, or a condition that caused oozing sores. His sickness was so unpleasant, the smell so strong, that the other monks avoided him completely. They were repulsed by his condition and feared becoming ill themselves. He was left to lie alone in his own filth, abandoned and in great misery. When the Buddha learned of the situation, he did not summon the other monks and scold them from a distance. He went directly to the sick monk's hut. He was accompanied by his attendant, Ananda. Without any hesitation or sign of disgust, the Buddha began to care for the suffering man. He and Ananda gently boiled water. With their own hands, they washed the monk's body, cleaning his sores and his matted hair. They washed his soiled robes and provided him with a clean set. They cleaned his bedding and made him comfortable, offering him water and soothing words. Only after they had cared for the man with such tenderness did the Buddha gather the other monks. He did not speak to them with anger, but with a deep, compassionate understanding. He reminded them that they had all left behind their worldly families to form a new spiritual family. "If you do not care for one another," he asked, "who then will care for you?" He then spoke a line that has echoed for millennia. "Whoever would tend to the sick is, in truth, tending to me." The Buddha's actions were not born from a sense of grim duty or a desire to set a moral example. They arose from a profound, non-dual understanding of suffering. When he looked at the sick monk, he did not see another. He saw suffering that needed to be alleviated. His compassion was not a thought. It was a direct, physical, and loving response. This is the nature of the compassionate heart. It is the natural expression of a mind that has, through deep listening, seen through the illusion of the separate self. It is the music that the fully tuned instrument of our life begins to play. Listening opens the door to understanding our own pain. Understanding our own pain opens the door to understanding the pain of others. Understanding the pain of others dissolves the walls that separate us. And when those walls dissolve, the natural response of the heart is Karunathi, gentle, powerful, and unwavering wish for all beings to be free from suffering. This compassionate impulse does not stop with the people we like or the people who are near us. As it grows, it naturally expands. It extends to strangers, to people we find difficult, to animals, and ultimately to the entire ecosystem of our planet. We begin to see with new eyes. We see the interconnectedness of all life, how the suffering in one corner of the world is related to the actions in another, and how the healing of one small part contributes to the healing of the whole. The walls of the separate self, which once seemed like solid fortress, become increasingly transparent, revealing a vast, interwoven reality. Our final conversation on this path takes us to this ultimate perspective, the panoramic view from the mountaintop, the liberating wisdom of interbeing. The path of deep listening begins with the small, intimate details of our own experience, the feeling of the breath, the ache in our shoulder, the arising of a single thought. As our listening deepens, our perspective expands. We learn to listen to others, to our work, to our most difficult emotions. With each act of listening, the walls of the separate self, the fortress of the inner fixer, become a little more transparent. The culmination of this journey, the fruit that grows from the flower of compassion, is a panoramic view of reality itself. It is the final and most liberating realization that nothing, absolutely nothing, exists on its own. It is the wisdom of interbeing. This beautiful term, coined by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, is a simple way of expressing a profound truth known in Buddhism as dependent origination. It means that everything inter-is. Nothing can be by itself alone. It has to interbe with everything else. Let us return to the sheet of paper we looked at earlier. We saw that the paper could not exist without the cloud, the rain, the sun, and the logger. But let us listen even more deeply. Where does the cloud end and the ocean from which it evaporated begin? Where does the logger end and the bread that gave him energy begin? Where does the bread end and the wheat, the soil, the farmer begin? If we trace these connections, we discover a seamless, interwoven web of causes and conditions where no hard lines can be drawn. The sheet of paper is, in truth, the entire cosmos, manifesting for a moment as a sheet of paper. So it is with us. The idea that you are a separate self, locked inside your skin, is a trick of perception. You are not in the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself through your unique consciousness. The air you are breathing right now is not separate from you. In the next moment, it is you, becoming the energy that fuels your cells. The food you eat becomes your body. The ideas and kindness you receive from others become your thoughts and your character. The light from a distant star, traveling for millions of years, enters your eye and becomes your experience of sight. To listen with this level of depth is to understand that the boundary between self and other is a porous, arbitrary, and ultimately illusory line. Imagine life as a vast, silent symphony. For most of our lives, the inner fixer has us playing the role of a single, anxious musician, convinced that the most important thing is to play our own part as loudly and perfectly as possible. We are so focused on our own notes, our own performance, that we don't listen to the rest of the orchestra. The result is dissonance, frustration, and a feeling of isolation, the experience of dukkha. The path of listening is the process of that musician finally putting down their sheet music, taking a deep breath, and listening. For the first time, they hear the deep, steady rhythm of the percussion, the soaring melody of the strings, the harmonious chords of the woodwinds. They realize they are not a solo act, but a single, essential voice in a magnificent, collaborative composition. Their personal part only finds its true meaning and beauty when it is played in harmony with the whole. In the same way, our individual lives only find their deepest meaning when we realize we are playing our small, beautiful part in the grand symphony of existence. Our every thought, word, and action is a note we contribute to this universal music. There is a powerful and ancient image from the Buddhist scriptures that captures this vision with breathtaking beauty. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, multifaceted, perfectly polished jewel. The net is so vast that the number of jewels is limitless. The most miraculous quality of this net is that if you look closely at the surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire, infinite net. And if you look even more closely at any of those reflections, you will see that each one also reflects all the other jewels, creating an endless, recursive cascade of light and connection. Each of us is one of these jewels. We are a unique, individual expression of consciousness. We have our own perspective, our own brilliant facets. Yet, our true nature is not just our solitary existence as a single gem. Our true nature is also our capacity to contain and reflect the entire universe. What happens to the jewel next to us is, in a very real way, happening to us, because its light is reflected in our being. The sorrow of a distant jewel casts a subtle shadow across our own surface. The healing of one jewel sends a ripple of light that touches every other jewel in the entire net. The illusion we live under is that we are a single, isolated jewel. The wisdom of interbeing is the realization that we are both the individual jewel and the entire net simultaneously. There is no separation. This realization is the ultimate healing. Our journey began with the feeling of being a broken, isolated self, a flawed project that needed fixing. We felt lonely, anxious, and separate. The wisdom of interbeing dissolves this core problem at its root. It reveals that the very concept of an isolated self was the source of the sickness. Healing, therefore, is not about fixing the broken jewel of me. Healing is the realization that the jewel was never separate in the first place. The sense of alienation evaporates, replaced by a profound and comforting sense of belonging. The question shifts from, how can I get what I need to be happy, to, how can I act for the well-being of the entire net, of which I am an inseparable part. This is the pinnacle of the listening path. The journey that began in the cramped, anxious workshop of the inner fixer has led us here, to the vast, open, and luminous expanse of Indra's net. The frantic need to control and perfect a separate self has been replaced by a joyful, compassionate participation in the dance of life. We are no longer a lonely wave, terrified of crashing on the shore. We are the ocean, expressing itself for a time as a beautiful wave. We are no longer a single anxious musician. We are a vital and willing instrument in the silent symphony. From the claustrophobic feeling of being a problem to be solved, we have journeyed through the stages of listening to our body, our breath, our pain, our relationships, our work, and have arrived at this breathtaking vision of our true nature. We have seen that the path to peace is not through a better strategy of fixing, but through a deeper capacity for listening. The journey of understanding is now complete. All that remains is to gather the wisdom of this path, to look back on the journey with clarity, and to carry its most vital message forward into the living of our days. We began our journey in a dusty workshop with a frantic carpenter trying to fix a broken chair, his effort only making it worse. We were that carpenter, relentlessly trying to mend the perceived flaws in ourselves and our world. We were the king who sought to pave the entire earth to soothe his tender feet. We were the monkey with its hand caught in a trap, unable to let go of the prize that was imprisoning it. This is the path of the fixer, a path of struggle, resistance, and exhaustion. It is a path that leads, inevitably, to a deeper sense of our own brokenness. But we discovered another way. We learned the radical act of simply stopping, of putting down the hammer and the plans. In that stillness, we began a new conversation. We learned to listen. We listened to the forgotten wisdom of our bodies and the steady, faithful rhythm of our breath. We found the courage to turn and face our own suffering, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. We listened more deeply and heard the whispers of its cause, the restless, thirsty clinging of our own minds. And in the heart of that understanding, we heard the promise of silence, the possibility of a peace that was not a distant destination, but a homecoming. We walked a path of listening, tuning the instrument of our life, and as we did, our entire perspective shifted. The journey that began with an isolated, broken self has ended here, in the vast, luminous, and interconnected expanse of Indra's net. If there is one vital message to carry forward from this journey, it is this. Peace is not a prize you win at the end of a long and difficult struggle. It is not a state you achieve after you have finally fixed all of your flaws, solved all of your problems, and perfected your life. Peace is the clear water that was always there, waiting patiently beneath the mud of our striving. It is the quiet sky that was always present behind the storm clouds of our thoughts. It is our fundamental nature. The path to peace, then, is not one of more effort, but of less resistance. It is not about becoming someone better, but about finally allowing ourselves to be who we already are. The search ends when we realize that the home we were so desperately seeking was the place from which we started. And so, we leave you not with a complex new project, but with a simple, gentle invitation. The next time you feel a wave of discomfort, a pang of anxiety, a surge of irritation, a shadow of sadness, a small experiment, for just 30 seconds, resist the powerful, conditioned urge to fix it. Resist the impulse to distract yourself, to analyze it, or to judge yourself for feeling it. Instead, just stop. Take one conscious breath and listen. Turn your awareness inward and listen to the raw sensations of that feeling in your body. Offer this difficult guest the simple, profound courtesy of your quiet, kind attention. You do not need to do anything about it. You only need to be with it. In that moment of listening, you are no longer the victim of your feeling. You are the spacious, compassionate awareness that is holding it. The door to healing and to peace is not locked and hidden in some faraway land. It is right here. It has been here all along. And the key is not another tool to fix what is broken. The key is your own silent, courageous, and loving attention. The journey begins and ends with the simple choice to stop fixing and to finally, deeply, begin to listen.